promotes and teaches the Italian language, culture and heritage. In a spacious office, I meet the institution...
This is CBC Winnipeg. Here are the lineup tones in advance of the CBC Winnipeg weekday morning show.
rose to 7.5%. Now it's Italy, not Argentina, where people hope to find brighter prospects. But this isn't just a middle-class migration. Giusella's colleague, Lucilla Villacorda, tells me about some of her other students. In the last few years, we've had groups of mechanics, builders and lorry drivers doing courses here because they need to show they have a basic level of Italian to work there, she explains. Regions around Italy are actively looking for skilled labourers and talking to recruitment companies in Argentina because, like many countries around the world, Italy has an ageing population. During my short time in the city, I stumble across Argentines toying with leaving on a daily basis. There's a special WhatsApp group of Argentine Italian lifeguards who swap tips on where to find free Italian classes and how to navigate the passport paperwork. One group member, called Gabriele, says he wants to try his luck in the same town in southern Italy his grandparents came from. Daphne Caccione, who had an Italian father, fondly remembers speaking Italian in their neighbourhood when she was little. She's now nearing retirement age and wants to up sticks. I want to see the beautiful countryside in Italy, she says, and to be surrounded by centuries of history. There's nothing like it. The move to Italy isn't a tidal wave, more of a thoughtful stream, but for some Argentinians, their European ancestry has become a valuable form of psychological insurance, reassuring them that they, like their forebears, have an economic escape route.
Jane Chambers. And that's all for today's programme. Thank you for listening. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope. And we'll be back next weekend with more of the stories of the real lives behind the global headlines. So do join us again then, here on the BBC World Service.
Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Hello as well to the folks streaming us online on YouTube, and to the folks watching us on CBC Television. Lots to come here on the program. We'll talk about it in just a few moments' time. First, though, Heather Wells joining us with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a philanthropist who helped bring the Canadian Museum for Human Rights to Winnipeg says her family is pausing financial support to the museum. Gail Asper says it follows concerns around the new exhibit on the Nakba. That's the term Palestinians use to describe Israel's 1948 Declaration of Independence. We're going to hear what the difficulties have been with that exhibit coming up. As well, people in Rossburn have rallied to help a retired couple whose historic farmhouse was destroyed by a tornado earlier this summer. The bricks of Brian and Bernadine Brown's century home were ripped right off their walls, their historic farmhouse destroyed. We'll hear what's next for this couple in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Heather Wells, from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Hello as well to our morning team, Abby Adiyemi and Darren Morash, making us all look good as well. Both of them making us look and sound good. All right, lots to come on the program. As you've been hearing in the news, a person is dead and at least 29 are injured after a Pride Parade attack in Germany. We'll get reaction from a local queer advocate. That's in our 7 o'clock hour of our program. In our first hour of the program, it's not just Canada that's being targeted. Last week, the U.S. also imposed new tariffs on dozens of trading partners with the justification that they are not doing enough to combat forced labor. We'll have more on what you need to know about these tariffs and the impact of the ongoing trade uncertainty on the global economy. That's coming up at 6:40 here on the program. Mainly clear right now here in downtown Winnipeg. 20 degrees is the current temperature. In Brandon, mostly cloudy and 18 degrees. Brandon and Winnipeg both under a yellow level heat warning, so be prepared for hot conditions there. Otherwise, a sun and cloud mixture expected in the forecast today for Winnipeg, a high of 29 degrees. For Brandon, today sun and cloud as well, and a high of 29 with a humidex 37.
Today on Q.
I'm Garvey Bailey, in for Tom Power. Tracy Chapman went from being a relatively unknown singer in the 80s to basically everyone in the world knowing her now famous song, Fast Car. She'll tell you how starting as a street performer prepared her for the biggest moments in her career.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. There are 139 active wildfires burning across BC, and a number of them are considered to be out of control. Over the weekend, 2 wildfires merged near the village of Clinton. Some homes in the village are destroyed. Wildfire crews from outside the province are on the way to help. But as Janella Hamilton reports, the BC Wildfire Service says its resources are stretched thin.
We're not expecting that things will quieten down.
Amanda Bennett Arrieta is with the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. She says while crews have not been able to assess wildfire damage near the village of Clinton, they have received reports of damages to homes and some commercial properties.
We know it's a difficult time, and we hope to get through this as quickly as possible.
2 aggressive out-of-control wildfires, the Pear Lake and 59 Creek fires, have now merged near Highway 97. As of Sunday, there were more than 140 fires burning in BC. About 60 are out of control. Jean Strong is with the BC Wildfire Service. She says more ground and aerial crews are coming in from outside the province to help fight the fires.
There'll be 25 personnel from the Yukon and 66 from Alberta. In addition, after the long weekend, we're looking forward to welcoming over 100 personnel from Mexico.
In West Kelowna, crews gained enough ground to lift an evacuation alert affecting more than 500 properties. Renee Strelayev says it's a reminder of how fast a wildfire can threaten their community.
All of a sudden, there was like a big flash. It was a massive lightning strike, and it was almost within 5 minutes. You could see the smoke billowing over the mountain.
Those wildfires prompting highway closures and air quality warnings for much of the province. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A new study from the Canadian Medical Association is warning of doctor burnout. Some 10% of physicians have left the profession. A new study surveyed more than 400 ER doctors across Canada. Dr. Kristen DeWitt is an emergency physician and professor. She co-authored the paper.
Everybody commented on the increased workload and the deteriorating clinical care, and most physicians felt powerless to change that.
Advocates say the Canadian government needs to invest more in healthcare. Wildfires continue to ravage parts of France and Spain. French President Emmanuel Macron has called an emergency meeting as fire threatens Bordeaux. That fire did not get worse overnight. It is still about 15 kilometers away. But the weather could soon make this situation worse. Another heat wave and higher winds are expected tomorrow. In Spain, the crisis is growing. Crews battle a growing fire in Avila, a region in the west. Crews struggle to contain those flames. Authorities say this is the region's worst fire crisis in decades. More than 330,000 people have been displaced in France and Spain.
Bueno, miedo más que nada por lo que se pierde, por la naturaleza.
What really hurts is the emotional loss, says a woman in an emergency shelter. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is warning there are difficult days ahead. Indian authorities have suspended a policeman. They say the officer fired at students in a protest with an assault rifle. Videos uploaded by the students show a police officer in riot gear running towards demonstrators in Bihar State. The Cockroach Junta Party has been leading protests, and the demonstrations recently led to the federal education minister resigning. In Israel, family, friends, and army soldiers attend a funeral for Israeli Mayor Yuval Ezra. Israeli settlers attacked several villages overnight in the occupied West Bank. It follows the death of 2 Israeli soldiers and 4 Palestinians. 2 mosques were set on fire and buildings were vandalized with graffiti. On Friday, clashes broke out in the village of Tal. Palestinian authorities say settlers provoked the violence, but the Israeli military says shots were fired by both sides. The United Nations says dozens of Palestinians have been killed in settler-involved incidents since January. U.S. President Donald Trump has hit pause and canceled plans to escalate the war in Iran. There are reports suggesting a diminishing supply of U.S. munitions. The U.S. had previously been attacking Iran with missiles for nearly 2 weeks. Steve Futterman has more.
The U.S. may have a new concern in the war with Iran. Reports this weekend suggest American stockpiles of interceptor missiles are running low, and that could be playing a role in decisions about what to do next. On Friday, the U.S. paused its nightly bombing attacks. The New York Times says that decision was made in part because of the stockpile worries. Yesterday, White House officials rejected reports of any problems. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz said it's simply not true.
I want to be crystal clear. The U.S. military, and I've verified this every which way, has everything that it needs.
Still, the reports about concerns continue. One even suggested that in some cases, the U.S. has actually chosen not to intercept some Iranian projectiles because of the stockpile issue. The worries have been going on for months. Some stockpiles have reportedly fallen off by more than 50%. And it's not as if the supplies can be replenished just like that. It can take years.
There is not enough of them.
Tom Carrico is director of the Missile Defense Project.
The quantity of interceptors that have been expended and shot is shockingly high.
The U.S. says the reason for the bombing halt is that progress is being made in talks between the U.S. and Iran. And Donald Trump reiterated this weekend his claim that Iran, in his words, is begging to make a deal. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
A shooting at a Seattle food festival has killed 3 people.
Boom, I see a crowd of people running in the background. So, boom, I took off. Next thing I know, it was just everybody was running everywhere. People was falling over strollers. People was hiding. It was like everybody was fearing for their life.
A witness describes what happened when people heard the gunshots. 4 people are injured, including a 2-year-old child. The Bite of Seattle is an annual 3-day festival. Hundreds of food and retail vendors and performers attend. The shooting started about 6 p.m. local time. The event was winding down. Tyrone Davis is Seattle's assistant police chief.
Thankfully, we had officers on the scene that were brave, went to those shots, and prevented more victims from being injured. Right now, we believe that we have no outstanding threat to the community. We do have one suspect that is being interviewed.
Davis says police are searching for a second suspect. Police say 2 people were shooting at each other. Authorities are not considering this a public attack on the festival. The Gordie Howe International Bridge officially opens to traffic today. The bridge will serve as a crucial trade link between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan. But it opens in the middle of strained trade discussions and new tariff threats from the U.S. Willie Lowry is in our Washington bureau. And Willie, the ceremonial opening was on Friday, so what can we expect today?
So at noon today, vehicles will begin driving across the Gordie Howe International Bridge connecting Windsor and Detroit. Named, of course, after Mr. Hockey, Howe led the Detroit Red Wings to 4 Stanley Cups and remains a defining figure on both sides of the border. The bridge, meant to draw the 2 countries closer together, has instead tested and strained the bonds between Ottawa and Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to block the opening and force the 2 countries to negotiate revenue sharing from tolls, despite the fact that Canada paid for the $6.4 billion construction of the bridge. Under the new agreement, Canada will receive 50% of the net toll revenues for the first 15 years of the bridge's operation. The U.S. will receive the other half. U.S. officials were disinvited last week from the ceremonial opening after the U.S. threatened 50% tariffs on a range of Canadian exports. Trump lashed out on social media, saying the previous deal was, quote, terribly negotiated, and that the U.S. now gets 50% of the profit. Despite the drama surrounding the opening, for the first time in nearly a century, drivers will have a new way to cross the Detroit River and a new economic artery connecting the two countries. Cyclists and pedestrians will soon be able to enjoy the bridge as well, starting on August 5th.
Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. I'm in for Marcy Marcusa this morning along with our live team, Abby Adiemi and Darren Morash. Lots to come here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. It's not just Canada that's being targeted. Last week, the U.S. imposed new tariffs on dozens of trading partners with the justification that they are not doing enough on forced labor to combat forced labor. We'll let you know what you need to know about these tariffs and the impact of the ongoing trade uncertainty on the global economy. In this first half hour of the program, as wildfires continue to burn across the country, a recent report drills down on the health costs associated with wildfire smoke. So we'll get into the details of the report ahead here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Stay tuned. At 10 minutes after 6 o'clock, let's head to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. And Heather Wells joining us with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg philanthropist behind Canadian Museum for Human Rights says her family is pausing funding to the museum over concerns around an exhibit on the displacement of Palestinians. Gail Asper says she feels the way the museum describes the related history on panels in this exhibit is missing context. A celebration of Anishinaabe culture went ahead in Winnipeg after what organizers say was an act of vandalism. On Friday, poles of the Treaty 1 powwow's teepee were found slashed in half. But people pulled in donations to fix the structure. We're going to hear more about that in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Darren Morash is making us look and sound good on our YouTube stream and on CBC television. And Abby Adiemi in studio now in our control room with a look at a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, how was your weekend, Faith?
It was so nice. It was, you know what? I thought it was hot.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was hot, but it wasn't as sticky as I was expecting.
Yeah, it wasn't as sticky. And I think the high point of my weekend was, catching the beautiful sunsets. You need to see that orange ball just glowing up there. And for some reason, I didn't feel the mosquitoes a lot this weekend because I attract them a lot. But I did not feel much mosquitoes this weekend. So that was a good one.
That's
but
good.
But the sunset was beautiful. And I think this is just a season where you'll be enjoying a lot of sunsets. But for today, we want to talk about the heat in the city. It's going to be a hot day. We're looking at heat warnings covering the Pembina Valley region and into the Westman region. We're talking about areas around Winnipeg all the way to Steinbach, St. Adolphe, tracking it towards the U.S. border. And then if you go towards the Westman region, similar conditions we are seeing there. We're looking at daytime highs climbing to between 36 and 38, just actual temperatures. And of course, the humidity is going to be getting close to 37, 38, and even 39 in some areas. But for now in the city, the sun is already making its appearance over the city. This morning's forecast brings a mix of sun and clouds. We will notice some hazy conditions. Current temperatures right now at the Forks, we're seeing 20 degrees there. We're heading towards a humid high of 29. But if you factor in the humidity, it's going to be close to 37, or some areas might even see 38. And there's just a chance of showers late in the afternoon and some thunderstorms. We might notice it, we might not. Across the south, similar conditions, mornings between 21 and 23 in most of the regions. And we're seeing sun and cloud across the southern part of the province, with daytime highs getting close to 29 in most of the regions. And the humidity would be, as mentioned, close to 39 degrees. If we look up north, we're seeing that splits. We're seeing 18 degrees in some areas, and we're seeing even single digits in some areas. If you look towards Churchill right now, it's 11 degrees in that part of the province. But in summary, we're going to be seeing a hot, muggy start to the week across the province, with the warnings in effect for the Red River Valley and the Westman region for today. So for traffic, if you see anything there, let us know. But I would always say expect some delays where we have those major construction routes, and even just a slight curb closure phase usually cause that drag. Once the cones come on, you start seeing people trying to merge, so you might notice that. So take your time, give yourself extra time. You see anything, let us know. 788-3093.
We're at 15 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. When it comes to dental care, many of us brush and floss without a second thought, and also visit the dentist regularly for a checkup. But what about your pets? Yep, dental issues like tooth decay can also impact animals like cats and dogs. And those dental issues can lead to bigger health problems. The good news is that there are things that you can do to help improve your pet's health. I got some tips from veterinarian Dr. Jonas Watson of Grant Park Animal Hospital.
Hi, Faith.
Dental issues in pets, I mean, are these pretty common?
They're very common. We definitely, through the lives of dogs and cats and other species, we start to see changes with teeth, the accumulation of plaque and tartar, potentially issues with individual teeth in the mouth. And obviously, as veterinarians, we want to intervene and help those animals feel better.
Of course, I mean, with human beings, if your tooth hurts or you have dental issues, you can just talk and say something. But what about for pets? Are there signs to watch out for?
I mean, pets are pretty stoic, and they're much less wimpy than we are as human beings. So
That's very true.
They don't always show discomfort, and they don't always make it obvious. But there are certain kinds of changes that a veterinarian can recognize. So it's important to have animals seen regularly and have the mouth examined to ensure that there's nothing that's worrisome in there. A dog or cat may potentially start chewing in a different way. They may decide to go off of chewy toys or treats. They usually will eat through dental pain usually, but there may be some changes in the way that they chew or which side of the mouth they use preferentially, that kind of thing.
Animal teeth, I mean, how different are they from humans, or are they pretty similar in terms of what each section of the mouth and teeth do?
I mean, the teeth are obviously very different. They look different, and that has to do with evolutionary biology. But in terms of like the husbandry and the care of the teeth, it's very similar. When you eat food, plaque accumulates on your teeth that mineralizes in a day or two into tartar or calculus, and that's the part that a dental hygienist or a veterinary technologist would chip off with specialized instruments.
Mm-hmm.
We also would polish teeth and that sort of thing. So the at-home care to prevent periodontal disease is very similar, but of course most dogs and cats don't get twice daily brushing the way people do, and so when we do have to do dental procedures under anesthesia, they tend to be a little bit more involved than what you would get when you go to the dentist.
And so if, say, a cat or a dog has a bad tooth, it's not addressed or hasn't been seen for a while, it gets worse, what's the long-term harm? What potentially could go wrong?
Well, we do, worry the same way the human dentists on the human side worry about the potential spread of disease to other parts of the body, like the kidney or the heart. Those are things on our radar too. But the main thing that I worry about is pain, is sort of undiagnosed pain that animals are living with and they're not really showing to the owner. And it's pain that we sometimes discover as veterinarians when an animal is in for a dental exam or in under anesthetic for a dental procedure, cats get these resorptive lesions in their mouth. And even when they're anesthetized, if we probe one of these lesions, the cat's jaw will kind of chatter. And the cat may not have been showing any sort of sign to the owner for months or even years, but these are painful lesions, and we want to address them appropriately.
Let's say that you have a pet and you need to essentially extract or remove the tooth or teeth. What happens there? What's involved in getting that done?
Usually when we do a dental procedure, we evaluate all the teeth the same way that a dental hygienist does for people. We often will take x-rays to assess how things look under the gum line. We scale and polish and all that. And if we detect teeth that are problematic that need to be removed based on investigation, then we surgically remove those teeth. Sometimes it's multiple teeth, sometimes it's just one. We put little stitches in, just like a dentist does. The animal goes home with pain control and maybe antibiotics, and they usually recover quite well. Dental work is definitely within the wheelhouse of most general practitioners in veterinary medicine.
Extraction is sort of the last resort, right? How do you prevent that from happening? How do you keep tooth decay at bay?
Well, you really do have to do something like the same kind of care that you do for your own teeth. So brushing, wipes, sprays, encouraging the dogs to chew appropriate things that are not too hard, the use of different kinds of products. There's a great website put out by the Veterinary Oral Health Council, vohc.org, the Veterinary Oral Health Council. They have a long list of great products that are proven to remove plaque and tartar from teeth, and I would encourage pet owners to visit that website to find options for chewy things to help keep teeth clean.
Dr. Watson, if dental surgery is what you get at, is this an expensive endeavor or is it a cheap and, less expensive endeavor?
Well, it's involved. So, I mean, it's probably not going to be very cheap, but if you are staying in regular touch with your veterinarian and kind of intervening dentally when they suggest that you do, and maybe even doing sort of preventive stuff at home like brushing and feeding certain diets and certain kind of chewy things, then that'll go a long way toward preventing the need to remove a bunch of teeth in middle life or later in life.
Appreciate your time today, Dr. Watson. Take good care.
Yes, you too. Thanks.
Dr. Jonas Watson is a veterinarian with Grant Park Animal Hospital. I spoke with him back in 2024.
You know the voices that tell the story of our province. Now you can take them anywhere. From the essential start to your day on information radio to the conversations that define our lunch hour on Radio Noon and the pulse of the city on Up to Speed, your local connection is always within reach. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Your favorite voices, your province, right in your pocket. Download the CBC News app today, your daily rhythm, live and local.
Coming up to 22 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, and of course, streaming on YouTube. Hello as well to the folks watching us on CBC Television. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. BC fire crews are at capacity as wildfires merge in the province, forcing residents to flee their homes. Across the country, this season's wildfires have created chaos, forcing folks out of their community and, of course, creating those air quality issues as smoke drifts many kilometers away. There is a recent report that brings the cost of exposure to wildfire smoke, both health and economic, into a sharper focus. Now, a recent report also describes both of those things. Ryan Ness is Director of Research on Adaptation at the Canadian Climate Institute. Ryan is in Toronto, joining us there. Ryan, welcome to the program. Ryan, you there?
Good morning. Hello.
Good morning, Ryan. What did this analysis find about the health effects of exposure to wildfire smoke?
So our analysis estimates that over the past 12 years, 2,500 premature deaths annually are attributable to wildfire smoke across the country. And there have also been millions of additional acute health impacts each year, where Canadians experience some kind of health impact, whether struggling to breathe, having asthma flare-ups, or days where they can't do normal activity.
And in fact, the data suggests that the events are becoming more frequent as well. Can you contextualize that for us?
Yeah, so what we've seen over the past decade or so is that wildfire seasons are becoming increasingly severe. The amount of forest burning is at unprecedented levels in terms of the overall trend, and smoke impacts and the amount of smoke isn't going down. Seems to be settling at a new higher level. So these types of air quality conditions, health impacts across the country are part of our new reality under climate change.
How did you conduct this research? What did you do to those 12 years of data?
So we used 12 years of air quality data that were collected by governments at hundreds of monitoring stations around the country. And you can extract from that how much wildfire smoke Canadians have actually been breathing in year over year. And then we ran that data through a tool developed by Health Canada that estimates how air pollution affects people's health. So these are scientific estimates, not an exact head count person by person of who is impacted, but it's the tool and the method that are the standard approach for this kind of health research in Canada.
And as I mentioned in our introduction, there's also an economic impact. What do we know about that part of it?
So putting a dollar value to those impacts, we estimate that wildfire smoke has cost Canada and Canadians about $230 billion over that 12-year period. About $5 billion of that comes from the sort of clear, obvious connections, more emergency room visits, people missing work, lost time where people can't function as they normally would. But a much bigger cost, about $19 billion per year, or about $225 billion over that 12 years, comes from the long-term health toll of breathing in smoke year after year, resulting in earlier deaths.
There was a report in the medical journal JAMA just this Friday that found links between periods of wildfire smoke and a spike in emergency department visits for both migraines and other similar things, other headache conditions. What's your sense of how prepared we are for this increased strain on our healthcare system and those economic costs you talk about if we continue on this trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, we do have an excellent healthcare system, of course, but we've seen that climate change is putting strains on it that we haven't experienced before. Thinking back to the 2021 heat waves in British Columbia, the lower mainland, the Vancouver area's healthcare system was completely overwhelmed by the number of people requiring care because the conditions they were not prepared for the conditions, and they had not been experienced before. And that's what climate change means, whether it's extreme heat, whether it's extreme wildfire smoke causing air quality levels to spike at levels and for durations that we've never seen before. We have to take a good hard look at whether or not we're prepared for that surge. And as you say, it will come with a cost, but that is the cost of protecting Canadians.
Right. I mean, and the cost right now is those 2,500 premature deaths annually, right? And then the $230 billion that you saw as well. What do you think the take home ought to be for listeners?
I think the take home is that wildfire smoke is yet another sign that climate change is having real measurable costs on Canada and Canadians. And in the case of wildfire smoke, it's extracting that cost from our health. And the biggest costs are sometimes invisible. Again, in this case, the form of long-term strain on people's hearts and lungs, and ultimately in terms of years of life lost. And it shows that we can't assume that this is a problem that's going to affect only certain areas or that won't affect us directly, because wildfire smoke air quality issues are showing up in cities and communities now far from active fires, sometimes even thousands of kilometers away.
The Prime Minister insists his government remains committed to creating a low-carbon economy, but also says Canada can't afford to ignore the growth of oil and gas for short-term climate goals. Given this report, how do you reconcile both of those things?
Part of the reason that we are seeing these extreme wildfire seasons and smoke seasons are because Canada and the rest of the world haven't done enough to cut the emissions that are the root cause climate change. We are now locked into decades of increasing climate change because of the emissions of the past, which just shows how important it is to cut emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, as soon as possible. We have some emissions reduction policies that are working, but overall Canada is not on track to meet its climate targets of controlling global warming to a manageable level. So the Government of Canada and other governments in Canada, provinces and territories especially, need to move faster and with international partners, other countries around the world, to implement policies that reduce emissions and prevent the worst of climate change, because every year we delay locks in worse climate change and worse fire seasons down the road.
Ryan, thanks for the time today. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
That's Ryan Ness, Director of Research on Adaptation at the Canadian Climate Institute, which released the report.
I'm Jura McElwraith, your local reporter for CBC Manitoba in Steinbach. You're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Thanks very much, Jura. At 29 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. No major issues to tell you about on your morning commute, but if you do see anything, 204-788-3093 is the phone number to call. Still to come on the latest episode of CBC's Cross Country Checkup, callers weighed in on how Ottawa should respond to Trump's latest tariff threat. We'll hear more about that after the news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 20 degrees. It is a hot final week of July in Winnipeg. Mix of sun and clouds today, but again, we have another heat warning for all of southern Manitoba, including Winnipeg and Brandon. In Winnipeg, we may see showers or a thunderstorm, hazy with a high of 29. The humidex is what you'll feel, 37. A philanthropist who helped bring the Canadian Museum for Human Rights to Winnipeg says her family is pausing financial support to the museum. Gail Asper says it follows concerns around the new exhibit, Palestine Uprooted, Nakba, Past and Present. That collection explores the Nakba, Arabic for catastrophe. It's a term Palestinians used to describe Israel's 1948 Declaration of Independence, which led to some 750,000 Palestinians being displaced. Asper says she feels the small exhibit is missing context, including that Jews were also displaced in the wake of Israel's creation, and that Arab leaders rejected a 1947 resolution to divide Palestine into Arab and Jewish states.
My biggest concern is that all the work that we put into this is going to be for naught if people don't trust this museum anymore.
A museum spokesperson says it stands behind its curatorial process and its reputation as a trusted source of human rights information. Apparent vandalism did not stop a powwow this weekend. Indigenous dancers at a Treaty 1 powwow in Winnipeg. On Friday, poles for the powwow's teepee were found slashed in half, but people pulled in donations to fix the structure. Dancer Dakota Aishin says it's a testament to the resilience of Indigenous people.
When our people get dragged down, like stuff like that happen, we come together, we work together, and we rebuild. And so that's what we're kind of known for, is rebuilding from the ground up.
Organizers and people at the powwow managed to set up a teepee with an extra set of poles offered for the weekend. People in Rossburn have rallied to help a retired couple whose historic farmhouse was destroyed by a tornado earlier this summer. The bricks of Brian and Bernadine's Brown's century home were ripped from the walls. Their historic barn's upper half was ruined. Now the Browns are picking up the pieces with help from their community. Karen Burgesson volunteered at 2 fundraisers for the families affected by that storm.
Just to see how many people come together to help out in something like that. When it's a disaster, people do pitch in and help.
The Browns are living in a small suite in Rossburn for now. They plan to move to Oak Bank next summer. The suspect in the Berlin Pride attack has been shot dead by police. Abdul Balaut was tracked down in the western suburb of Spandau on Sunday. Police say he was carrying a knife when he was confronted by officers.
During the operation to apprehend him, he advanced on our officers while armed, was stopped by gunfire from our Special Operations Unit, and subsequently died. We will now conduct further investigations into the facts and the precise course of events.
Bollard is accused of killing a woman and injuring 29 people. On Saturday, he allegedly drove a van into a crowd at the Pride event, stabbing several people. Many say they were shocked.
I'm still in shock. I've been to many large Pride events, and given the incidents of recent years, we've often worried that one of our events might be targeted at some point.
The fact that this event is now overshadowed and will forever be linked to this day of death and mourning is of course a wound in the heart of the entire community.
Authorities say Bollard had previously tried to join ISIS. Canada's newest border crossing opens to traffic today. The Gordie Howe International Bridge connects Windsor to Detroit. The bridge is meant to be a symbol of partnership between the two countries, but it opens in the middle of tense trade discussions and new tariff threats. Nicole Sekela is the owner of Rock Bottom Bar and Grill in Windsor.
Everybody's been anxiously waiting for it to open on both sides, and a lot of Americans come over just to say sorry, basically.
The bridge opening was delayed by U.S. President Donald Trump over toll revenue. On Friday, Canada hosted an official ribbon cutting, but did not invite any of the U.S. representatives. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And you can find more Manitoba news throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Magandang umaga. Good morning, Manitoba. Faith Fondal here in Studio 15. I'm in for Marcy Marcusa on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. We'll get the very latest in business news coming up in this half hour of the program. First, though, hello to Abby Adiemi, who is following the commute so far and, of course, watching the weather.
Yes, it's going to be a hot one today, Faith. We're talking about heat warnings, the Pembina Valley region, the Westman and the Interlake region and the Winnipeg region also under this heat warning as we see humidex values close to 40 today. While the northern part, those smoky conditions we've been getting a lot on, we don't have any for today. Outlook for the city, we're looking at outside these heat warnings we have for the city. It's partly cloudy to start. Expect some sunny conditions to make its way through. Current temperatures around 20 degrees. You will notice the winds. Expect that sunny conditions to make a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later. We may see a slim chance of showers in the afternoon and maybe some thunderstorms in the mix. But no, you will notice the hazy condition. Of course, the hot eye of 29 degrees that we'll be getting to. The humidex for the city would be around 37. You travel to the Pembina Valley region, Morden and nearby areas stretching towards the Headingley area. We have this heat warning present there. Current temperatures, we're looking at that sunny start already around 21 in that part of the province, aiming for a high of 29 today. And the humidex will be similar to Winnipeg, around 38. There will be local smoke in the air. And of course, look out for late showers or maybe some thunderstorms. Towards the Brandon area, similar conditions. Heat warnings also present there. Temperatures around 19, mostly cloudy skies. You're climbing to a hot high of 29 today. The humidex around 37. You will notice the smoke in the air at some point, and we do have a slim chance of afternoon showers or some thunderstorms for the Westman region. We then go into the Parkland region, Dauphin towards the Roblin area, 17 and mainly cloudy at this time. You're aiming for a high of 28. Gimli sitting at 19 with sunny conditions, warming to 29. The humidex will be around 38. You will notice the local smoke, and of course, we're now crossing to the central parts of the province, the Flim nearby. We're seeing some areas misty, some areas enjoying sunny conditions, 17 at this time. No warnings there. You will get to a high of 27. Norway House is at 16 degrees, warming to 27 also. Thompson, good morning. You're seeing light rain shower at this time, 15 degrees there. You get to a high of 24 later in the day, but the humidex is going to be around 27. Then the Lynn Lake Gillam area, we're seeing similar temperatures, 14, 15 degrees with cloudy conditions there. The region's getting close to 25 degrees, while for the Tudela Lake region, we have 14 degrees there, warming up to 22. Then for the Churchill and York region, we look at 11 at this time. Partly cloudy skies, aiming for a high of 21. So across board, we will definitely see the heat go round today, but the concentration will be more in the Red River Valley, the Pembina Valley, and of course the Westman region, where we're going to be seeing humidex values close to 40 degrees. Outside of the heat, if you see anything in traffic, please let us know. Just expect delays, as I always say, during rush hour, as rush hour builds from 7 o'clock, wherever you have constructions present, you will definitely be encountering some slow-moving traffic there. But if you see anything, let us know. 788-3093.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi, our studio director and our tech here on the program. Darren Morash is our streaming producer. Hello to the folks watching us on YouTube and also on CBC television. We're going to hear what callers had to say on CBC's cross-country checkup. They weighed in on how Ottawa should respond to Trump's latest tariff threat. We'll talk about that in just a few moments. First, we're going to welcome Phil Dumont with today's business news. Good morning.
I forgot you guys put the radio on TV, don't you?
We do, yeah.
The internet. Yeah, I forgot about that. Because, they never gave me a camera down here, so I'm just a disembodied voice.
We have a nice photo of you for folks who are watching on YouTube. You look very, very serious, very businessy. You're like, we're talking about serious things, right? Phil, we're, of course, going to talk about those threats. By the U.S. administration, the president there. This is something that is not new.
No.
What is different, though, around this time, would you say?
Well, Faith, it's partly because of the economy, but partly because how analysts now view the administration. It's changed in the last 12 months. You're right. They brought in tariffs the last time when Trump was around. This time last week, he was threatening to slap 50% tariffs on Canada. It comes in right now, it's set to come in the middle of August. He also replaced an expiring set of duties on other countries, including Canada, with 10% tariffs. So they went into effect. The equity markets were pretty mute at the reaction, and that was different than 2025. That's when stock prices kind of soared or sank, depending upon the headline. They were bouncing all over the place. This time didn't really move much. But this time, actually, the economic situation's trickier. For one thing, the U.S. Economy continues to underperform. In 2024, the last Biden year, American GDP grew 2.8%. Last year was like 2.1%. This year is estimated 2.2%, according to Wells Fargo. So it's still less than 2024. And to some extent, all the trade stuff, it's a bit of an own goal. They didn't have to do this. They could have just kept on the same path. Inflation, it's higher. Core rate in the U.S. in the latest number is 3.4%, and that's a 2.5-year high. And that gives the Federal Reserve a problem because they're worried about inflation, not so much the economy, although they worry about it as well. The other problem is that last year there was a sense that Trump's tariffs were a negotiating tactic. Threaten the other countries with big duties, and you can get a better trade deal. Analysts now see the latest move as evidence that Washington really sees these tariffs as some sort of permanent economic policy. New government comes in, they might change it, but they don't necessarily have to. That creates a problem for Canada. You might be able to talk Washington off that 50% duty figure. That's pretty high. But we're likely to face some tariffs of some substantial amount for the foreseeable future. We did last time around. We probably will this time around. A problem, though, the tariffs also create a problem for the U.S. Widely seen as an economic drag means the American economy will probably grow slower than it otherwise would. But high prices will keep eroding the paycheck of the average American. Recent survey I found, more than 50% of companies in the U.S. Northeast, that's just where the survey was done, who paid last year's tariffs, they still haven't passed the cost along to consumers, but say they will. So in other words, really that part of the shoe dropped last year, but the other part of it will drop this year.
Right, and we've been hearing about that as well. Let's talk about the AI bubble, because there's growing concern that it might be getting close to bursting. Is there any evidence that suggests that?
Well, I'm looking at the shorts and credit concerns. Now, technology stocks have soared in the past few months thanks to that stratospheric spending on AI infrastructure, companies like Google and Microsoft. As a result, the NASDAQ up 30% from the end of March to the beginning of June. Technology sum index of the Dow Jones Industrials up 28% in the past 12 months. That's the good numbers. But there are worries now when all this AI spending will translate into higher profits for companies. As a result, there's a jump in short selling by investors. So, Faith, a short sale is when you sell an equity you don't own, but at some point in the next month or so, you actually have to buy the stock and hand it over to the purchaser.
Right.
But in between, what you're guessing is that the stock's price will fall and you'll get it cheaper. And that's your guess. But what it also means is some smart investors, because these are sophisticated people, see a big market drop in the near future. That's how they're going to make their money. The number of short positions in Canadian and American stocks, $2.5 trillion. That's a record amount. So that's a high number. Then there's Moody's. The rating agency last week said big tech players like Alphabet and Microsoft, they're bleeding cash because of all the AI spending. Companies said, look, they got strong balance sheets, but this problem called negative cash flow could become more serious if the AI spending just keeps draining resources. For investors, the problem really is 50 to 55-year-olds. 10 more years of work, but they remember the 2008 economic crash. Back then, the Dow fell 54%. So if you have a big market correction, they don't have enough time to make money to make it up in their retirement money. So they're going to be really hair-wired to, as soon as the market drops a bit, to sell. But the problem, Faith, then becomes it gets to be self-fulfilling. If a bunch of people start selling and I say, I better sell too, it becomes a snowball going down, and that's the issue.
The wrong snowball.
Yeah, wrong
Instead of the snowball effect of paying off debt. Let's talk about business expense fraud. Apparently, it seems to be growing these days. What do we know about why?
Like most things, it's about artificial intelligence. A recent report found that 60% of companies said they see an increase in financial fraud. Here we're talking about submitting a receipt for $120 for a meal that only actually cost you $20 when you're on a business trip, or maybe a fake taxi chit, that kind of stuff. Sounds dinky, but in 2024, business travel fraud totaled about $3 billion US. And there's a new problem, AI-generated receipts. You can get an AI program to draw you up a pretty reasonable fake slip for that shishi restaurant that you never actually went to. Past 12 months, 70% of the bogus receipts submitted were AI fakes. It's resulted in the average fake slip about $101 versus $182 in the old days. But there's more fraudulent receipts being submitted these days because they're getting generated, off-site, if you will. Here's the oddity of all of this. How do we know that AI is producing these fake receipts? Another AI program detected the fraud slips. So it's not like Optimus Prime versus Megatron, but it's kind of the future where one AI program just be catching out the other AI program, and you and I will be sitting on the side going, this is kind of cool.
Phil, nice chatting with you. Have a good Monday.
Thanks, mate.
That's Phil Dumont from your CBC National Business Desk. Well, the Sean Taylor Band is a familiar name in the Winnipeg music community, known for their strong musical presence across the province. Have a listen. This one's called Standing Here.
From the first thing I remember, I wanted to be a star. I sang every single Dan Seals song in the backseat of your car. You always had a record on and never turned it down. You always made sure music was around. You made me play piano. You put up with my bands. You drove me north, east, south, and west and all across the land. Let me find my way in life and strike out on my own. But I knew I could always make my way back home. Mama, I know I put us through the ringer, running around half crazy, trying to tell the world I'm a singer. For the grace of God, your love and a couple tears, I really don't think I'd be standing here. For every single late night call in every small town bar, how many nights I'd stumble into you reading in the dark. I know we've come a long, long way from the trouble of my youth. I knew I never would have made it without you. Mama, I know I put us through the ringer, running around half crazy, trying to tell the world I'm a singer. For the grace of God, your love and a couple So here I stand, a full-grown man, living out my dreams. Nobody would have bet on this except for you and me. As the spotlight hits my eyes and the crowd comes into view, I thought I'd sing a song that's just for you. Mama, I know I put you through the ringer, running around half crazy trying to tell the world I'm a singer. For the grace of God, your love and a couple tears, I really don't think I'd be standing here. I really don't think I'd be standing here.
That's the Sean Taylor Band with a tune called Standing Here. We're at 10 minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. On Saturday, U.S. President Donald Trump posted on his social media an AI image of a giant filter standing on the U.S. and Canada border with a sign reading, North America Air Filter Barrier, Clean Air, Clean Borders. And on Friday, he re-upped his threat to tariff Canada for the wildfire smoke. The smoke, forced labor, and discrimination were all apparent reasons for his newly announced 50% tariffs, which take effect August 19th. They cover a wide range of products, including dairy, wine, spirits, cement, furniture, wigs, and hockey sticks. All about 5% of Canadian exports to the U.S. Moshe Lander is a senior economics lecturer at Concordia University, joining us from Calgary. Moshe, welcome back.
Good morning.
What is behind this renewed trade war? There was a bunch of reasons. What do you make of it?
So there's two different things running in parallel here. The 10% tariff that seems to be applied across the world these days is basically to replace the 10% tariff Liberation Day stuff that the U.S. Supreme Court said was unacceptable. So it's almost like Trump spent the weekend thumbing through various tax codes and legislation saying, I wonder if there's an excuse to put the 10% back. And he came across this idea of forced enslaved labor, and let's just do that instead and see where this goes. It was legislation that was written almost 100 years ago. It's never been put into use. So we're going to see how that plays out. Now, at the same time, he also has those 50% tariffs that he's threatening on Canada that are now less than 30 days away. I think that's more a bargaining chip than the 10% type tariffs are. And there he probably wants Canada to discuss the liquor ban that's in place in a lot of provinces, and also supply management, which every federal leader here has said is a no-go area. Trump wants it to be a go area.
I once tried to bring something from the Philippines, and we had to go through the tax code, the import list, to make sure how much are we going to tariff on this. It gave me a headache. How is the global economy reacting to all of this? Because unless you sit down and look line for line, it can be pretty confusing.
Yeah, I'm sure every world leader is thrilled at the thought that there's more tariffs coming into play here and everyone's going to have to sit there and spend time trying to figure out what's going on. But that's it. It's Trump seems to want to create all of these problems so that everybody's distracted. If you've read his biography, it seems to be the way that he runs his business as well. I don't want to do parenting advice this early in the morning, but it seems to also be the way that he parents his children by pitting one against the other. And seeing who comes out on top. So it's the same sort of thing here. World leaders are saying, look, this is not the way we've been going over the last 90 years. It's been towards more integration, removal of barriers, reduction of tariffs, not the other way. And then when you're making it up on a flimsy argument that these countries are supporting forced enslaved labor, look, it exists in the world. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. But every country is going to say, we do as best as we can to make sure that we're not complicit in that. These tariffs are an excuse rather than a way of really addressing what's a serious issue.
We've heard from the Canadian dairy industry when all of this came about. What about those blanket tariffs from a year ago? How have those existing tariffs affected industries like steel and car manufacturing?
Well, production goes down for sure. Remember that tariffs is just a fancy word for a tax, and nobody likes taxes. So there's two possibilities here. Either the consumer pays the tax or the producer has to eat the tax. The end result, though, is the same. If the consumer's paying the tax, then they don't want to pay it. And so they buy less of the stuff. The producer then says, well, if they're not buying our stuff, we don't need as many shifts, we don't need as many workers, and we're going to scale back production. And so what we see in Canada then is unemployment goes up, GDP goes down. But even if it somehow lands on the Canadian producer, right, the I'm going to build a wall and get Mexico to pay for it philosophy, when the Canadian producer sees their costs go up, they say, well, I don't want to pay this cost, so I'm going to get out of this business or I'm going to scale back in this business. So you end up with the same outcome then. Unemployment's higher, GDP's lower. And I think the last time that I was on both your show and this show, we were talking about the idea of, is Canada really in a recession or not? Well, the fact that we're even having a conversation about that is because these tariffs have slowed the economy to a halt, maybe even to the point of going backwards.
Is it obvious to you why oil and gas seems to be something that imports and some other products will be exempted? That's what American trade reps are saying.
I mean, it is obvious to me, but I think it's obvious to a lot of Canadians as well, right? When Trump says we don't need Canada for anything, and he says it on multiple occasions, we roll our eyes or our blood pressure goes sky high because we say, of course you need Canada. Well, of course he needs Canada, and he never needs it more so than when it comes to critical minerals, potash, oil and gas. And so what gets exempt from it? The stuff that he realizes that even in his best case scenario, the U.S. can't do it itself. And so those things are exempt. Remember that this is a president who said on my first day, I'm going to bring prices down. That was always a lie because prices going down is called deflation and that doesn't happen. But even if his intent was clear that he's going to try and stop prices from rising as quickly, you can't do it when you have tariffs in place. And so if he wants to produce results in the next 3 months before midterm elections, he's got to try and alleviate some of that. If he insists on having tariffs which are inflationary by nature, then he at least has to keep it out of the oil and gas markets and the stuff that he can't do on his own, because that would just be too inflationary and would probably be the end of his political career.
What is his version of backing out?
I don't know.
If you consider these are part of negotiating tactics.
Look, he needs to have a win, and he always needs to claim that he has a win. Even when he loses, he claims that he has a win. So, I know that he said that with the 50% tariffs, at least, they were predicated on the idea of Canada's insistence on supply management and the liquor bans in so many provinces. So these become now bargaining chips that, well, I'll get rid of the 50% if you're at least willing to have that conversation. Federal leaders don't want to talk about supply management. So the easiest one, of course, is get rid of the liquor bans, which was a foolish idea in the first place. Maybe good politics for various provinces, but bad economics. That's an easy one then to offer up and say, fine, we'll put the liquor back on the shelves. It's not like Canadians are going to start buying California Cabernet just because they're back on the shelves again. I think everybody's feelings are a little too hurt for that. So, at least at that point, then we can say, well, we gave you what you asked for. It's just Canadians don't want to buy it, but you can't tariff that.
Moshe, it's always good to have you. Thanks for this. Take care.
Anytime.
That's Moshe Lander, a senior lecturer in economics at Concordia University, joining us from Calgary. We're about 2 minutes before the top of the hour here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Let's head to our CBC Winnipeg local news desk, and Heather Wells joining us with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg philanthropist behind Canadian Museum for Human Rights Museum says her family is pausing funding over concerns around an exhibit on the displacement of Palestinians. Gail Asper says she feels the way the museum describes the related history in this exhibit is missing context. A celebration of Anishinaabe culture went ahead in Winnipeg after what organizers say was an act of vandalism. On Friday, poles of the Treaty 1 powwow's teepee were found slashed in half. People, though, pulled together with donations to fix the structure. We'll take you there coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. I'm Faith Wendell in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Our team here in the program includes Abby Adiemi on the controls, our studio director as well, and Darren Morash, who is our streaming producer. So hello to the folks watching us on our YouTube page. And almost goodbye to the folks watching us on CBC Television. Thanks for tuning in this morning. There is lots to come here on the program, including a conversation about how Team Canada's World Cup run has inspired many folks. Now, a new survey suggests that soccer might be the future sport of our nation. Stay tuned to hear more about that next. As well, as you've been hearing in the news, a person is dead and at least 29 injured after a Pride parade attack in Germany. We'll get reaction from a local queer advocate in our next half hour of the program. It is sunny here in downtown Winnipeg. Let's see. The current temperature 20 degrees at the Forks, 17 degrees at the airport, with the relative humidity at 91%, almost 100% at the airport. We'll give you a full look at your forecast, including more on that yellow level heat warning in place for Winnipeg and Brandon. Goodbye to the folks watching on TV, and we'll be back after World Report. Stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
The bridge has been done for months, and we've been awaiting its opening.
I'm Rebecca Zanbergen. Threats of a blocked opening, fights over revenue, separate opening ceremonies. The Gordie Howe Bridge between Ontario and Michigan is contentious. Mayors on either side of the border about why the bridge is needed, coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The wildfires in Spain and France are showing no signs of easing. Fire is threatening Bordeaux. It is France's largest wine region. And French President Emmanuel Macron has called an emergency cabinet meeting. In Spain, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is warning of difficult days ahead. More than 300,000 people in both France and Spain have been forced from their homes. William Denslow has more from Bordeaux.
The battle continues. Crews wrestle with a wildfire near Bordeaux that has burned more than 40,000 hectares of land, roughly 4 times the size of Paris. Sunday night was relatively stable, according to local officials. Welcome news after strong winds on Saturday evening forced a further 50,000 people to evacuate across 5 regional municipalities. But the winds remain strong and unpredictable. This and the incredibly dry weather conditions is complicating the efforts of firefighters on the ground. Meanwhile, in Spain, firefighters are also working to put out wildfires around Madrid and Valencia, where officials say the fire is out of control. Over 100,000 people have been forced to evacuate.
As we were leaving, the smoke was already coming in and ash was falling. We ended up packing almost in the dark. We were in a hurry. Thankfully, my daughter and my nephew helped me gather everything.
Crews here in France fighting the blaze are working tirelessly to cut trees and remove brush, to remove ammunition for the fire and stop its march towards Bordeaux. The fire is at the gates, according to officials, but the mayor says there are currently no plans to execute an evacuation order for the more than 800,000 people living in the area. Temperatures are expected to pick up throughout the week, further complicating the task of firefighters. William Denslow for CBC News, Bordeaux.
Indian authorities have suspended a policeman. They say the officer fired his assault rifle in a crowd of student protesters. Videos uploaded showed students with an officer with an AK-47 running towards the demonstrators in Bihar State. The officer is seen firing at least 3 shots in the air. The Cockroach Janta Party has been marching against an exam leak scandal. The demonstrations led to the resignation of the federal education minister. Palestinian officials say Israeli settlers set fire to 2 mosques in the occupied West Bank. A separate incident left 4 Palestinians and 2 Israelis dead on Friday. Palestinian authorities say Israeli settlers attacked the mosques and vandalized buildings. It is the latest in a series of incidents this year. Anna Cunningham reports.
There is mourning on both sides. The burial of one Israeli soldier killed in a shooting Friday near the Palestinian village of Tal. For Palestinians too there is grief as they bury their relatives. This latest violence in the occupied West Bank started Friday. Palestinian authorities say villagers came out of their homes to confront Israeli settlers. What followed was a shootout and deadly clashes. Houses and cars set on fire, and early Sunday Palestinian leaders say Israeli settlers set fire to mosques. The United Nations and the Palestinian Authority say dozens of Palestinians have been killed in similar clashes this year. Milena Ansari is director of the Occupied Palestinian Territory Department at Physicians for Human Rights, an Israeli human rights organisation. She says nowadays they're seeing more heavily armed settlers.
There's, in a way, a real change in the pattern of severity of violence.
One Palestinian visitor from Miami in the US says he fought Israeli settlers on a neighbour's porch.
They came ready. Like this time, it's scary.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he ordered the military to search Palestinian villages in the West Bank, seize weapons and make arrests, adding they are prepared to act against what he described as nests of terror. His government opposes Palestinian statehood and has expedited Israeli settlements in the disputed territory, a move seen as illegal under international law. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
U.S. President Donald Trump has hit pause and canceled plans to escalate the war in Iran. There are reports suggesting a diminishing supply of U.S. munitions. The U.S. had been attacking Iran with missiles for nearly 2 weeks. Steve Futterman has more.
The U.S. may have a new concern in the war with Iran. Reports this weekend suggest American stockpiles of interceptor missiles are running low, and that could be playing a role in decisions about what to do next. On Friday, the U.S. paused its nightly bombing attacks. The New York Times says that decision was made in part because of the stockpile worries. Yesterday, White House officials rejected reports of any problems. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz said it's simply not true.
I want to be crystal clear. The U.S. military, and I've verified this every which way, has everything that it needs.
Still, the reports about concerns continue. One even suggested that in some cases, the U.S. has actually chosen not to intercept some Iranian projectiles because of the stockpile issue. The worries have been going on for months. Some stockpiles have reportedly fallen off by more than 50%. And it's not as if the supplies can be replenished just like that. It can take years.
There is not enough of them.
Tom Carrico is director of the Missile Defense Project.
The quantity of interceptors that have been expended and shot is shockingly high.
The U.S. says the reason for the bombing halt is that progress is being made in talks between the U.S. and Iran. And Donald Trump reiterated this weekend his claim that Iran, in his words, is begging to make a deal. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
A new study from the Canadian Medical Association Journal is warning of doctor burnout. Some 10% of physicians surveyed left the profession. The study surveyed more than 400 ER doctors across Canada. Dr. Kristen DeWitt is an emergency physician and professor. She co-authored the paper.
Everybody commented on the increased workload and the deteriorating clinical care, and most physicians felt powerless to change that.
Advocates say the Canadian government needs to invest more in healthcare. 3 by-elections may be a test for Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals. In BC, Ontario and Quebec, people will be going to the polls August 31st. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is in the Parliamentary Bureau with more on this. Megan, what is at stake here?
Well, a lot at stake, especially for the Liberals. As things stand, they have 171 seats in the House of Commons. So because of how the numbers are expected to play out, because of some other upcoming vacancies, they need to win at least one of these races to maintain their technical majority. But if they win 2 or even all 3, it will obviously give them more of a cushion when it comes to the slim majority government they have. So lots of at stake for them. The Ontario and BC seats are pretty strong Liberal ones, so it would be an upset if they lost those. The Quebec seat up for by-election could be more of a battle. It is a Conservative seat, and the Conservatives have held it since 2018. But the other parties have won it from time to time in years past as well, including the Liberals. So that really will be the key race to watch here. Can the Liberals flip it or not? For the Conservatives, losing that seat would be a blow to them, especially after losing some of their MPs who have crossed the floor to the Liberals. So in terms of what themes the candidates are focusing on, I think we can expect trade with the U.S., the ongoing tariff threat from Trump to impose more tariffs next month to also be a big theme. But yeah, now with these by-elections officially called, the candidates can kick into high gear.
Megan, we've seen a lot of turnover. What do we expect down the line?
Yeah, these aren't going to be the only by-elections for Canadians in the next couple of months. There's another current vacant seat, but Carney didn't call that by-election yesterday. That's also a seat in Quebec that was held by the Bloc. The MP there stepped down earlier this year to run in Quebec's provincial election. Then there's some upcoming resignations that will also trigger by-elections. So it will be a busy rest of the summer for these parties with these 3 by-elections for August 31st and then more on the horizon.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Ottawa. Canada's newest border crossing opens to traffic today. The Gordie Howe International Bridge spans the Detroit River. It connects Windsor, Ontario to the Detroit, Michigan area, and the bridge is meant to be a symbol of partnership between the two countries. But it opens in the middle of tense trade discussions and new tariff threats. Nicole Sakla is the owner of Rock Bottom Bar and Grill in Windsor.
Everybody's been anxiously waiting for it to open on both sides. And a lot of Americans, come over just to say sorry, basically.
The bridge opening was delayed by U.S. President Donald Trump over toll revenue. On Friday, Canada hosted a ribbon cutting without U.S. representatives. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Many people are injured and one person is dead after a violent pride parade attack in Germany, which has queer advocates in this province speaking out.
I think it's really devastating that Berlin had to cancel their parade. My fear is that other more vulnerable pride organizations around the world will feel like they have to follow suit because they feel like they don't have the resources to keep folks safe.
We'll hear more from the Executive Director of Trans Manitoba next here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage & Spence, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. Also coming up in this hour of the program, Team Canada's World Cup run inspired many, and now a new survey suggests that soccer might be the future sport of our nation. Plus, Gail Asper tells CBC why her family's foundation is pausing financial support for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights and what they say needs to change. That and more coming up next here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the app and on YouTube. Stay tuned. First, let's head to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk, and Heather Wells joining us now with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. A testament to the resilience of Indigenous people. That is how Indigenous dancer Dakota Aishin describes Treaty 1's powwow going ahead after apparent vandalism. On Friday, poles of the powwow's teepee were found slashed in half. People in Rossburn have rallied to help a retired couple whose historic farmhouse was destroyed by a tornado earlier this summer. The bricks of Brian and Bernadine Brown's century home were torn from the walls. Their historic barn's upper half was ruined, and now the Browns are picking up the pieces with help from the community. We'll hear what's been going on in the weeks that have passed since that tornado, and that's coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Hello to Darren Morash, who is our streaming producer today, and Abby Adiemi has been following both the commute and the weather forecast, and it's going to be another hot one, isn't it?
Yes, it's going to be a hot start to the week. We're talking about this serious heat warning across a chunk of southern Manitoba, bringing muggy hair and, of course, heat near 40 degrees across the Red River Valley region, the Pembina Valley, and even the Winnipeg area, the Brandon area, the Steinbach area. You are all covered under this yellow level heat warning as humidity will be pushing close to 40 degrees today, with just a very little kind of a relief coming overnight. But for during the day period, you will be dealing with muggy conditions. It's going to be intense, and this will be what we will be noticing for the rest of the week. So the watchword would be hydrate. Lots of water, lots of fluids will be the best for today. For the city right now, we're looking at temperatures around 20 degrees, sunny outside. We get to a humid high of 29 today with a humid index for the city around 37. Now across the Pembina Valley, the Westman, the Parkland, the Interlake region, similar conditions we're seeing 17s to 21s. That's what we're seeing across board with highs close to 29 degrees and those humid index values I mentioned reaching up to 38 degrees with a chance of late showers in most of the regions. But up north, we're looking at 15s and 17s in most of the areas with highs just getting close to 27 degrees. Overall, the heat will dominate the southern part of the province. Winnipeg, we're looking at about 20 degrees right now. We get to 29 later. And for traffic, just watch out for rush hour traffic delays. Give yourself extra time. You see anything, let us know. 788-3093.
We're at 14 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. And many folks in the queer community are mourning after a violent attack at the annual Pride Parade in Berlin, Germany. You've been hearing about this on the news. One person was killed, 29 injured, after a 21-year-old man suspected of ramming a vehicle into a crowd before launching a stabbing spree. He was shot and killed by police in a confrontation. Charlie O is the executive director of Trans Manitoba, joining us now after Lac Bonny's second annual Pride Parade. Charlie, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Faith.
What did the folks at Lac Bonny's Pride celebration, what did they have to say about what happened?
You know, there was a really lovely moment of solidarity at Lac Bonny Pride yesterday when we were cheering and chanting for our human rights, and someone shouted "For Berlin," and the crowd shouted back, and there was just this moment of quiet and solidarity, and I think it was really important that we connected that very small rural pride experience to this much bigger, much more recognizable global pride celebration.
What do you make, or what does it tell you when you hear something like this happening to people, and in particular, people celebrating a pride event?
It's really devastating, and it's indicative of the need for pride. You know, we still hear people question the need for pride celebrations around the world and here locally in Winnipeg and in Canada. And this is why, because we deserve to protest and celebrate safely and peacefully.
When you hear about an attack like this, I mean, what concerns you the most about it?
It concerns me that we will continue to see copycat attacks like this, and specifically like vehicles weaponized in large groups of people. I'm concerned that we'll continue to see like copycat episodes of this.
Do you ever prepare yourself a certain way before you go to Pride events as a result of what we're seeing?
Honestly, as an organizer in our community and someone who organized the Trans March this year, we do extensive safety planning to ensure the safety of our community. It's top of mind all the time. Even when it seems like we're planning a party, there's always risk assessment and safety planning around it.
Do you feel safe whenever you go to these Pride parades and Pride festivals?
You know, I think there's something to be said for like the really big Pride festivals like Winnipeg Pride with lots of security and they're very well organized. But I do worry about, just like rogue actors. I was involved in the Dyke March about a decade ago, and there was some really aggressive drivers like interrupting the march and like aggressively driving towards the protesters and marchers, and that was during a era of like less volatility towards Pride parades, and so now in this era of like increasing hatred and negative rhetoric towards our community, it's it's absolutely concerning for our safety when we gather.
The impact of hearing something like what happened at Berlin Pride, there's sort of the obvious reaction that you're seeing. What else are you seeing that you don't think people have a full appreciation of?
I think that people might not really be aware of the alienation within the queer community of trans folks and gender diverse folks, and I think that we especially live with fear of how we move through our community and how we're perceived in public. And I think that within the wider queer liberation movement, there is just still a lot of opportunity for trans folks to be receiving safety and care. And I worry that within these larger movements that we sometimes get left behind.
In the Manitoba context, what do you think needs to be done to show support?
We need to continue to have provincial support from the government, which we have right now, which is fantastic. And we need to see a real social shift, especially in rural communities, a social shift towards acceptance for queer and trans folks. We need to be, seeing higher employment rates, seeing folks get housed sufficiently so that there is a real safety in society and not just the safety at our own private pride events.
Charlie, thanks for making time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Faith.
That's Charlie O, Executive Director of Trans Manitoba. You can read more about this story at cbcnews.ca.
How do you listen to your favorite Manitoba shows when you're on the move? Get your daily dose of information radio, Radio Noon, and Up to Speed, live and on demand. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. It's the easiest way to keep our province at your fingertips. Download the CBC News app today.
Canadian rock icon Bryan Adams continued his decades of success into the late 90s with his signature mix of rock and pop. Cloud Number 9 became a familiar soundtrack for road trips and radio listeners at the time of the century. Here's Bryan Adams now with Cloud Number 9. Bryan Adams with Cloud, number 9.
Up on cloud number 9.
25 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Scott Regier joining us now with a look at sports. Hey, Scott.
Totally forgot about that Bryan Adams song. Nice to hear your voice, Faith. Been a while.
It's been a while. Good to hear you and good to see you as well. It was a Super Sunday for Canada at the Commonwealth Games, right?
Yeah, with the gymnast Ellie Black, Faith, and swimmer Josh Leando both winning gold medals. Toronto's Leando set a meet record in the 100-meter butterfly, an event he won silver in at the Paris Olympics. Then there's Black, who became the first person to win 2 all-around gymnastics titles at a Commonwealth Games, or at the Commonwealth Games over the course of her career. And the best bit, Faith, the Haligonian was surprised by her achievement.
Really? I didn't know that. I mean, that's amazing. It's super cool. I mean, it wasn't an expectation for myself for this competition. It was just to come and get back out doing the all-around, to be here with this team. So just to finish on the podium is incredible.
Black continues to shine, Faith, at the age of 30 in a sport where athletes usually hit their physical prime at around 20. But her longevity is only part of what makes her so impressive, according to CBC gymnastics analyst Kyle Schufeld.
This woman just keeps getting better, and that experience does play a really big role. Not competing since Paris 2024 in the all-around, she hasn't missed a beat. It's as if she's been competing solidly for the past 2 years. She knows how to build up to a peak. And I say this time and time again, when the lights are on and she has to salute the judge, Ellie Black goes into this world, and she can really just dial it in.
And Black could well be dialing it in L.A. in a couple summers' time. Already this country's most decorated gymnast, she hopes to cap her career by competing in a 5th Olympic Games. But back to Glasgow, Faith. Canada is now up to 9 medals in total. That's good for 6th place among all nations. Although don't be surprised if there's a further move up the medal table today, because...
Stop. Have a time.
I couldn't resist. Canadian hammer throw star Ethan Katzberg is going to go for gold this afternoon. The Nanaimo, BC native, the defending Olympic champion. And on that note, Cameron Rogers, who also topped the podium in Paris, has just finished first among all competitors in qualifying for the final. So CBC will continue to live stream from Glasgow all day long.
Fun for Canadians there, but not so much for organizers of the Canadian Open, right? Because it keeps getting worse news.
Yeah, it's true. With the list of top players, Faith, withdrawing, growing by the day, when the women's event starts Saturday in Toronto, it's going to do so without world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka. Wimbledon finalist Karolina Mukova and top Canadian star Victoria Mboko will also be absent, the latter two because of injury, while Sabalenka is citing fatigue. It's the same with the men's event in Montreal. Jannik Sinner and Novak Djokovic are the latest stars to withdraw, giving the same explanation. Even those who will compete, like 4th seed Alex de Minaur, are doing so with mixed feelings.
What's not normal is that for the last 3-4 years, I've had 2 days off. It's just never ending. That's the sheer fact of it. And the solution is you shorten it, because what's going to happen is players' careers are going to get shorter and shorter because they're just going to burn out mentally. There's just too much tennis.
Yeah, too much tennis, meaning the Canadian Open, given where it lies in the calendar, suffers more than most. Scheduled so soon after Wimbledon, but far enough away from the U.S. Open, it comes at a time, Faith, many players would sooner take in some summer sun and just recuperate.
Scott, let's finish with the finish of the Tour de France.
Yes, cycling's most prestigious race won yesterday by Slovenia's Tadej Pogačar. The 5th time he's done it, something only 5 men can now say. Pogačar was asked what it means to join such an exclusive club.
Not thinking about any history, about any clubbing or whatever. If it's 5th or the 1st, doesn't matter. It's unbelievable to cross the line in Paris, winning it. Every single one of them has different story, different meaning, and different emotions. And each one of them feels incredible and unbelievable for me.
At age 27, Faith, many believe Pogačar can go on to become the sport's greatest ever. And unlike the only competitor to win more tours than he has, Lance Armstrong, Pogačar has never failed a drug test before.
Scott, thanks for this.
You betcha.
That's Scott Regier from your CBC National Sports Desk. And still to come on the program, Team Canada's World Cup run inspired many. There's a survey that suggests soccer might be the future sport of our nation. We'll hear more about that coming up after the news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. Partly cloudy, 20 degrees, and we begin this last week of July with another heat warning across southern Manitoba, including Winnipeg and Brandon. Mix of sun and clouds in Winnipeg. Chance of showers, maybe even a thunderstorm today. A hazy 29. The humidex will be 37. A philanthropist who helped bring the Canadian Museum for Human Rights to Winnipeg says her family is pausing financial support to the museum. Gail Asper says it follows concerns around the new exhibit, Palestine Uprooted, Nakba Past and Present. The collection explores the Nakba, which is Arabic for catastrophe, the term Palestinians used to describe Israel's 1948 Declaration of Independence, which led to around 750,000 Palestinians being displaced. Asper says she feels the small exhibit is missing context, including that Jews were also displaced in the wake of Israel's creation.
If it's so small that you can't include the truth, then you need to either not do it or you need to expand it. That's a museum decision to make it so small. The museum's got lots of room. I think they have room for the truth.
A museum spokesperson says it stands behind its curatorial process. You can hear more on this story coming up in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. A celebration of Anishinaabe culture went ahead in Winnipeg after what organizers say was an act of vandalism. Families dressed in regalia dancing yesterday during the Treaty 1 powwow. Organizers found the poles they were going to use for a teepee had been slashed in half. Jason Whitford is Treaty 1's executive director.
It's an unfortunate reality, you know. Racism, discrimination, harmful acts, they'll come intermittently. And we just have to respond to them and not react to them.
An extra set of poles were offered for the event to allow the teepee to be set up. Whitford says they have also collected donations to replace those damaged poles. Well, it only took 10 seconds. A tornado ripped the Brown family's century-old farmhouse to shreds in June. Brian Brown says 20 years of work was erased in a heartbeat, and they are now picking up the pieces. Their home is unsafe to even enter. Brown says they've saved what items they can and are now living in a small suite in Rossburn. At the same time, he's working with their insurance provider to cover their losses.
You couldn't possibly build that house again. And not only that, but it wouldn't be the same. I mean, it's a historical house. It's not if you put it back up again.
Brown says with the help of their community, they now have their sights set on a new chapter. They plan to move closer to their children and grandchildren in Oak Bank next summer. A new study from the Canadian Medical Association Journal warns of doctor burnout. Some 10% of physicians surveyed left the profession. The study surveyed more than 400 ER doctors across Canada. Dr. Kristen DeWitt is an emergency physician and professor. She co-authored this paper.
Everybody commented on the increased workload and the deteriorating clinical care, and most physicians felt powerless to change that.
Advocates say the Canadian government needs to invest more in healthcare. Wildfires continue to ravage parts of France and Spain. French President Emmanuel Macron has called an emergency meeting as flames threaten Bordeaux. Another heat wave and higher winds are expected tomorrow. And in Spain, the crisis is growing. Crews battling fire in the western part of that country. Authorities say this is the region's worst fire crisis in decades. More than 330,000 people in the two countries have been forced from their homes. A recall has been issued by chocolate maker Cadbury due to undeclared pistachio. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the recall involves several of the company's Dairy Milk Oreo chocolate bars. It says there have been reported allergic reactions linked with the products, and consumers should either throw them out or return them to the store for a refund. Many people were hospitalized last year with salmonella after an outbreak of infections linked to certain brands of pistachios and pistachio-containing products. Well, you can find more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8, and you can stay in step with all the news as it progresses through the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. At 35 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. I'm in for Marcy Marcusa. And Abby Adiemi is here with a look at the forecast and the commute as well.
It's already getting hot across the southern regions. We have heat warnings that's going to be gripping parts of southern Manitoba today, bringing muggy hair conditions and, of course, eye heat near 40 degrees, while the northern part of the province just getting into those warm range also. Here in Winnipeg, 20, sunny outside. We're expecting a high of 29. The humidex will be around 37. There's a chance of showers in the afternoon and maybe some thunderstorms for the other southern regions from Brandon all the way towards Gimli. We're also seeing like 21s, 19s, and 17s with highs close to 29. Then you look farther north where we see the powerful influence sitting at 17, aiming for 27. Thompson is having heavy rain at this time at 15 degrees, while Tudula Lake is at 14. Churchill, we're seeing 11 degrees on the way to 21. So expect heat in the southern part of the province today. You see anything in traffic? Let us know. 788-3093. Current temperatures in Winnipeg, it's sunny and it's 20 degrees.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adiemi, our studio director and our technician. Hello as well, and thank you to Darren Morash, who is our streaming producer here on the program. Well, Canada's FIFA World Cup team gave many a reason to watch the game, and according to a new survey from Abacus Data, soccer is now the second favorite sport to watch for Canadian, and it's number one for those aged 18 to 29 and people not born in Canada. The CBC's Karen Paul spoke with David Coletto about why he is CEO of Abacus Data.
2/3 of Canadians said that they paid at least some attention to the World Cup, with close to half saying they were quite interested in it. So I think that the big takeaway is that, at least for now, the success of the men's team, the World Cup more generally, may have continued some of the momentum that soccer has seen in growing popularity across the country. When there's an event going on, especially one where a team does better than maybe people expect and creates this kind of buzz and unity, you're going to have a positive reaction to it. The question is, does it go on?
Who did you talk to? And I want to drill down a little bit on the 80% born inside Canada, because sometimes that skews the popularity of something given where they're coming from. And
Well, I mean, this is a representative sample of Canadians aged 18 and over. So we have the appropriate distributions by region and age and whether or not they were born in Canada. And I think when it comes to soccer, there's a few important sub-stories, right? Among those born outside of Canada, soccer is the most favorite sport. Those born in Canada, less so, but still rising as a sport that people are interested in. Younger Canadians, among those under the age of 30, age 18 to 29, soccer is the number one most favorite sport among younger Canadians, far more so than among those over 60. So we are seeing some dynamics play out that if you're from somewhere else, soccer, maybe you're bringing an interest with you to Canada. It's certainly there, but also it's, I think, always a good sign when the younger generation are more interested in something. It means it may have a lasting power as they get older. They're going to bring that interest with them.
That is Abacus Data CEO David Coletto speaking about the impact of the FIFA World Cup on Canadian viewership for soccer. As you heard in that clip, David says Canada Soccer needs to keep the momentum going for the sport. Paul Senra is with the organization, and the CBC's Karen Pauls spoke with him.
For us, the Men's World Cup was never going to be the finish line for us. It was always a catalyst to show the passion and show Canadians how great this sport can be. And we think it's the same thing on, these numbers are not, we haven't reached the destination. I think this is just the beginning in Canada. And so What we would love to see is for these numbers to be translated into support for the NSL on the women's side, for the CPL on the men's side. Our 3 MLS teams that are currently in action. Like the World Cup is over, but there's still so much more soccer to support across this country, and we are really hoping that those numbers will translate into certainly participation, but also the support of our professional sports teams across the country.
Well, and we just had an announcement here in Winnipeg last week about a women's professional team, the expansion team.
Desi's got more work to do apparently. Yeah, that's great news for everybody in that part of the country.
Yeah. So what do organizations like yours and all the way to the grassroots have to do to grow this sport, to capitalize on this moment?
I think the World Cup showed Canadians that we can build our own soccer culture. We don't have to replicate the American style. We don't have to replicate the European style. We can come up and we can create our own culture in this country. And so I think it was a massive catalyst to do just that. We've got our Women's World Cup next summer that I hope that passion and that attention and that awareness will carry over to. And then 2028 will be really interesting on whether or not we can have 2 national teams at the Olympic Games in LA.
That is the Chief Communications Officer for Canada Soccer, Paolo Senra, speaking about the FIFA World Cup and its impact on Canadians.
Feel that? That's the thrill of the Northern Super League. And it's back on CBC Gem, with 6 fierce clubs battling all season long for glory. From coast to coast, Canada's first professional women's soccer league is bringing the heat. For the fans who live for the roar of the crowd, the last-minute winner, and the moments that make sports unforgettable, this is your season. Watch the Northern Super League all season on CBC Gem.
You know the voices that tell the story of our province. Now you can take them anywhere. From the essential start to your day on information radio to the conversations that define our lunch hour on Radio Noon and the pulse of the city on Up to Speed, your local connection is always within reach. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Your favorite voices, your province, right in your pocket. Download the CBC News app today, your daily rhythm, live and local.
We're at 42 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Currently partly cloudy and 20 degrees here in downtown Winnipeg, under a yellow level heat warning in place by Environment Canada because of humidex values between 36 and 38 expected today and throughout the week, so be prepared for that. Otherwise, sun-cloud mixture in the forecast, light chance of showers and a risk of a thunderstorm. Hazy conditions, a high of 29, and again, with the humidex, it'll feel like 37. I'm Faith Wendell in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. An Asper Foundation trustee says the foundation is pausing new funding for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. The Asper name is synonymous with the CMHR. The steel, concrete, and glass National Museum on the banks of the Red River was the dream of Izzy Asper. After his death in 2003, just months after the museum was announced, his daughter, Gail Asper, became the driving force behind the creation of the first national museum outside the capital region. She's had a leading role with the museum ever since, but Asper now says she has complicated emotions around the CMHR, specifically when it comes to the recently opened Palestine Uprooted, Nakba Past and Present exhibit, which features stories of Palestinians' displacement from Israel. Gail Asper spoke with the CBC's Corey Funk about the exhibit and what she would like to see happen next. Here's part 1 of the interview.
Good morning.
So you've seen the Nakba exhibit firsthand. I know you have concerns. And before we talk more about those concerns, I do also understand you do appreciate some aspects of the display. Can you just tell us a little bit about the things that you do appreciate about it?
Sure. The exhibit is small, as everybody has said. And the main part of the exhibit are interviews with Palestinians who've been displaced and have their own lived experiences. which are very compelling. And the museum does those oral histories quite well, just in general. They always have. And there's also artifacts of people's, the deeds to their property, the keys that are so meaningful. And those are accurate and authentic. And I'm certainly not, there's been lots of accusations of inaccurate information and missing information, but I'm certainly not disputing any of that. I think those are accurate and well done and help to tell the story well.
So then what are the parts of the exhibit that concern you?
Well, actually, it's interesting. It's the voice of the museum that's the problematic one, not the voice of the Palestinians who've been a part of this. There essentially are two big panels, which if you're moving quickly through the museum, that might be all that you're going to see. And it's the panel information that sets up the whole Palestinian displacement that has really, really astonished and upset a lot of people who are historians and who know the history. So because of the very essential missing information that gives context to this whole displacement. And we've said many, many times that when you're talking about history, you're talking about current affairs, context matters.
What specific things do you think are missing in terms of context?
Well, the exhibit starts with the museum saying that in 1948, Palestinians were displaced by Israeli militia. And what people who are knowledgeable about this era of history is they would like it to say that in 1947, Palestinians were offered their own state by Britain, who was in charge of the Palestine area. They offered a state to the Jewish people and to the Arab people. And that state was accepted. The Jewish state was accepted. This was approved by the United Nations. Canada voted yes to the two-state solution. But the state for the Palestinians was rejected by the Palestinians. And that was the catalyst for the displacement, because not only was the state rejected, and I don't think a lot of people know, and certainly you would never know from this exhibit, that there was an offer of the two-state solution back in 1948. So there could have been, 78 years of a two-state solution. So no mention of the two-state solution, no mention of the fact that the Arab countries of Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, they all declared war against the fledgling Jewish state. So the war that was not started by the unarmed and defenseless Jewish citizens, the farmers, the scholars, the people living in the Jewish area, this war precipitated the displacement. And the museum actually has a video that we gave them from Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, who is clearly in this video interview saying, we were told by the Arab leaders to get out. And so we got out. And we assumed we'd come back, but it was not the Israelis and the Jews that were pushing us out. It was the Arab leaders. So had there been an acceptance of the state, and had there not been this war, there wouldn't have been a displacement. So I think that's highly relevant information that should at least be put in the introduction in one paragraph, so that you set the stage for what happened next. Not to say that there wasn't a displacement and that some of it was inspired by the Arab urging the Palestinians to leave, and some of it definitely inspired in the context of this war against these Jewish citizens. So there was, but then you can get into what it's like to be displaced. Then you can move into the rest of the exhibit, and that's okay. So I think that's highly relevant.
And if that paragraph was there, like you said, would you have been completely okay with this exhibit?
I would have been a lot happier. It would have lowered the temperature to say, so they know, like, there could have been this state. So yeah, I think it would go a long way to easing the concerns. And the museum was told this for several months when we saw the website. So they didn't really change the website. Actually, the website now has more information. This actually, they leaned in and omitted more information in the museum exhibit. The other aspects that I think really kind of shocked the minister, like there's a lot of talk about how can the Minister of Culture and Identity, Mark Miller, be weighing in on this exhibit. I think it's sort of an example of how blatant the omissions are that he felt compelled to say something. There's one panel on 1947-48, but then there's another panel on today, on Gaza. So they don't they talk about checkpoints, about how Palestinians are impacted by the checkpoints that Israel has put in that impact their quality of life. But they don't mention, they mention an uprising, but they don't mention that this was an armed terrorist uprising that had over 100 successful terror attacks against Israelis, resulting in thousands of Israelis killed or maimed. And as a result of those terror attacks, checkpoints were put in. So you can argue whether the checkpoints are fair, but you can't not say that they were just done to inconvenience Palestinians. I mean, I think it's inconvenient to have to go through checkpoints. We do it all the time in airports, and they are very inconvenient, but it's for safety and definitely it totally impacts Palestinian quality of life. But I think it's a lot more inconvenient to have your arms, to be graphic, blown off at a terror attack at a pizza joint in Tel Aviv with your family. So I think that was a big miss. I think just very quickly, one of the other big misses, which did upset the minister, was mentioning Hamas and assuming that the public would know who is Hamas. Why would anybody know who Hamas is? Well, Hamas is a terror group designated as such by Canada and many, many other countries, whose goal is the annihilation of Israel. And then they talk about October 7th and Hamas and invading Israel. And they don't talk about who Hamas is and what they want. And when Israel has, responded and gone into Gaza, they don't make one mention of the fact that 251 Israelis were taken hostage. These are babies. These were children. These were young people, old people. They were all taken hostage by Hamas. And it was the quest to get those hostages back that prompted such a potentially, describably, legitimately heavy-handed response by Israel. So again, you can debate all these things, but to not mention the hostages, to not mention who Hamas is and what they want, that's just obvious omission, and it's deliberate, and it was not necessary. And it to me, brings the curatorship into disrepute.
And what do you worry this lack of context from your perspective could lead to?
Oh, well, I mean, I did a presentation to the museum 6 weeks ago. I asked if I could give it one last shot, because we were just getting like radio silence. I said, can I please come and just tell what it's like to be Jewish in Winnipeg right now? There's such fear because of the rising anti-Semitism that the Jewish community has just launched a $2 million campaign to beef up security, bollards in front of daycares so people can't drive in, security cameras, more security people. And the government is spending tens of millions of dollars to protect Jewish communities because of the rise in anti-Semitism. The Prime Minister has announced a committee to get to the roots of anti-Semitism. My concern is that the information that's missing, will foment more Jew hatred and put more Jewish people at risk. We're seeing shootings in Montreal. We're seeing stabbings in Ottawa. And I just thought it was a little heartless and a little lacking in compassion for a human rights museum to be launching this exhibit without being scrupulously careful to have the balance and accuracy that I think a complicated story like this deserves.
Your family, of course, has very close ties to this museum, probably more than most, because you played a big part in founding it. How has this exhibit in general made you feel?
Well, I have spent 25 years of my life working on the concept, fleshing it out, making it a reality, working 24/7 to raise the money and convince the government to make it a national federal museum. And so I do, it's surreal that I actually had to go out and protest the museum when this exhibit came out. And I feel very betrayed by the curators, by the leadership, by the board, that they couldn't see their way clear to taking extra special care to have outside experts looking at this. I also feel embarrassed because, there's a lot of people, I'm inundated with calls from people saying, what's going on with that museum? How can we trust, can we trust anything if they do this? What else is not being looked at carefully? And this is where, the curator's job is to instill trust, to have scholarly rigor. And my biggest concern is that all the work that we put into this is going to be for naught if people don't trust this museum anymore. Because my dad always said, your most important asset is your reputation. You have to guard your reputation with your life, because once you're known as being a liar or providing half truths or any other character flaws, it's very hard to dial that back and regain the public trust. And so it's made me feel personally extremely disappointed. It makes me feel afraid, seriously, that people are going to get more anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, I think, ideological propaganda from this museum. And it makes me worried about, all of our work and the money that we've spent could be at risk because of this exhibit.
Gail Asper is a trustee of the Asper Foundation, speaking to Information Radio host Corey Funk, guest host Corey Funk. After 8 o'clock, Corey asks Asper what she thinks went wrong and what's needed to fix it, plus the response from the CMHR to Asper's concerns. We're at 5 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. We are under a yellow level heat warning in place for Winnipeg and for Brandon, put in by Environment Canada, because we're expecting humidex values to be between 36 and 38 today. We're also expecting them to continue to be above 36 for the remainder of the week, so it's going to be hot. It's partly cloudy and 20 degrees here in downtown Winnipeg. With the humidex, it already feels like 26. Lots to come in our next half hour as well. As I mentioned, part 2 of our conversation with Gail Asper, the trustee of the Asper Foundation. Corey Funk was speaking with her and asks her what she thinks went wrong, what's needed to fix it, as well as the response from the Canadian Museum of Human Rights to Asper's concerns. We're going to say hello to Abby Adeyemi, who has an update on the commute so far.
Yeah, if you are on that Kineston stretch and you're trying to head, like if you're heading towards the airport, I know there's a bit of construction going there. We also have this another one around the Scurfield to the McGillivray and the northbound middle lane, and the second left turning lanes are actually closed for construction work now. And if you are on that Kineston stretch, you will definitely at some point will be needing to reduce your speed down to about 60. And also there's going to be a lot of merging there, so take it easy if you are out there.
All right, thank you very much. That's Abby Adeyemi, our studio director and technician here on the program. We're going to say hello as well to Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a celebration of Anishinaabe culture went ahead in Winnipeg yesterday after what organizers say was an act of vandalism. On Friday, poles of the Treaty 1 powwow's teepee were found slashed in half, but people pulled together, getting donations to fix the structure. People in Rossburn have rallied to help a retired couple whose historic farmhouse was destroyed by a tornado earlier this summer. The bricks of Brian and Bernadine Brown's century-old home were ripped from the walls. Their historic barn's upper half was also ruined. Now, with the help of the community, they're picking up the pieces. We'll hear their plans in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Later on cue, singer-songwriter Tracy Chapman chats with guest host Garvia Bailey about writing her debut album nearly 40 years ago, the story she wanted to tell and the place she's held in our culture ever since. That's coming up later this morning on Q, and of course, wherever you get your podcasts, we'll play a tune from Tracy Chapman as well. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. Magandang umaga. We'll give you a look at the full forecast as well in our next half hour. Stay tuned. World Report is standing by.
Today on Q.
I'm Garvey Bailey, in for Tom Power. Tracy Chapman went from being a relatively unknown singer in the 80s to basically everyone in the world knowing her now famous song, Fast Car. She'll tell you how starting as a street performer prepared her for the biggest moments in her career.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Rebecca Zanbergen. Threats of a blocked opening, fights over revenue, separate opening ceremonies. The Gordie Howe Bridge between Ontario and Michigan is contentious. Mayors on either side of the border about why the bridge is needed, coming up on The Current.
World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. There are 139 active wildfires burning across BC, and a number of them are considered to be out of control. Over the weekend, 2 wildfires merged near the village of Clinton. Some homes in the village are destroyed. Wildfire crews from outside the province are on the way to help. But as Janella Hamilton reports, the BC Wildfire Service says its resources are stretched thin.
We're not expecting that things will quieten down.
Amanda Bennett Arrieta is with the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. She says while crews have not been able to assess wildfire damage, they have received reports of damages to homes and some commercial properties.
We know it's a difficult time.
2 aggressive out-of-control wildfires, the Pear Lake and 59 Creek fires, have now merged near Highway 97. As of Sunday, there were more than 140 fires burning in BC. About 60 are out of control. Jean Strong is with the BC Wildfire Service. She says more ground and aerial crews are coming in from outside the province.
There'll be 25 personnel from the Yukon and 66 from Alberta. In addition, we're looking forward to welcoming over 100 personnel from Mexico.
In West Kelowna, crews gained enough ground to lift an evacuation alert affecting more than 500 properties. Renee Strelayev says it's a reminder of how fast a wildfire can threaten their community.
All of a sudden, there was like a big flash. It was a massive lightning strike, and it was almost within 5 minutes. You could see the smoke billowing over the mountain.
Those wildfires prompting highway closures and air quality warnings for much of the province. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A new study from the Canadian Medical Association Journal is warning of doctor burnout. The study surveyed more than 400 ER doctors across Canada. It shows that 10% of physicians left the profession. Dr. Kristen DeWitt is an emergency physician and professor. She co-authored the paper.
Everybody commented on the increased workload and the deteriorating clinical care, and most physicians felt powerless to change that.
Advocates say the Canadian government needs to invest more in healthcare. The wildfires in Spain and France are showing no signs of easing. Fire is threatening Bordeaux. It is one of France's largest wine regions. And French President Emmanuel Macron has called an emergency cabinet meeting. In Spain, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is warning of difficult days ahead. More than 300,000 people in both France and Spain have been forced to leave their homes. William Denslow has more from Bordeaux.
The battle continues. Crews wrestle with a wildfire near Bordeaux that has burned more than 40,000 hectares of land, roughly 4 times the size of Paris. Meanwhile, in Spain, firefighters are also working to put out wildfires around Madrid and Valencia, where officials say the fire is out of control. Over 100,000 people have been forced to evacuate.
As we were leaving, the smoke was already coming in and ash was falling. We ended up packing almost in the dark. We were in a hurry.
Crews here in France fighting the blaze are working tirelessly to cut trees and remove brush, to remove ammunition for the fire and stop its march towards Bordeaux. The fire is at the gates, according to officials, but the mayor says there are currently no plans to execute an evacuation order for the more than 800,000 people living in the area. William Denslow for CBC News, Bordeaux.
Indian authorities have suspended a policeman. They say the officer fired his assault rifle in a student protest. Videos uploaded by students show a policeman running towards demonstrators in Bihar State. He points his AK-47 at them and then fires at least 3 shots in the air. The Cockroach Junta Party has led a wave of demonstrations. The students are protesting an exam leak, among other issues. The federal education minister recently resigned in response. Police are accused of using tear gas and excessive force. In Israel. Family, friends, and army soldiers attend a funeral for Israeli Major Yuval Ezra. Israeli settlers attacked several villages overnight in the occupied West Bank. It follows the death of 2 Israeli soldiers and 4 Palestinians. 2 mosques were set on fire and buildings were vandalized with graffiti. On Friday, clashes broke out in the village of Tal. Palestinian authorities say settlers provoked the violence, but the Israeli military says shots were fired by both sides. The United Nations says dozens of Palestinians have been killed in settler-involved incidents since January. U.S. President Donald Trump has hit pause and canceled plans to escalate the war in Iran. There are reports suggesting a diminishing supply of U.S. munitions. The U.S. had been attacking Iran with missiles for nearly 2 weeks. Steve Futterman has more.
The U.S. may have a new concern in the war with Iran. Reports this weekend suggest American stockpiles of interceptor missiles are running low, and that could be playing a role in decisions about what to do next. On Friday, the U.S. paused its nightly bombing attacks. The New York Times says that decision was made in part because of the stockpile worries. Yesterday, White House officials rejected reports of any problems. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz said it's simply not true.
I want to be crystal clear. The U.S. military, and I've verified this every which way, has everything that it needs.
Still, the reports about concerns continue. One even suggested that in some cases, the U.S. has actually chosen not to intercept some Iranian projectiles because of the stockpile issue. The worries have been going on for months. Some stockpiles have reportedly fallen off by more than 50%. And it's not as if the supplies can be replenished just like that. It can take years.
There is not enough of them.
Tom Carrico is director of the Missile Defense Project.
The quantity of interceptors that have been expended and shot is shockingly high.
The U.S. says the reason for the bombing halt is that progress is being made in talks between the U.S. and Iran. And Donald Trump reiterated this weekend his claim that Iran, in his words, is begging to make a deal. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
A shooting at a Seattle food festival has killed 3 people.
Boom, I see a crowd of people running in the background. So, boom, I took off. Next thing I know, it was just everybody was running everywhere. People was falling over strollers. People was hiding. It was like everybody was fearing for their life.
A witness describing what happened when people heard the gunshots. 4 people are injured, including a 2-year-old child. The Bite of Seattle is an annual 3-day festival. Hundreds of food and retail vendors and performers attend. The shooting started about 6 p.m. local time. The event was winding down, and Tyrone Davis is Seattle's assistant police chief.
Thankfully, we had officers on the scene that were brave, went to those shots, and prevented more victims from being injured. Right now, we believe that we have no outstanding threat to the community. We do have 1 suspect that is being interviewed.
Davis says police are searching for a second suspect. Police say 2 people were shooting at each other. Authorities are not considering this a public attack on the festival. Later today, the Gordie Howe International Bridge opens to traffic. The $6.4 billion crossing connects Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan. It has been the target of U.S. President Donald Trump's ire in recent months. The CBC's Emma Loop reports.
Everybody's been anxiously waiting for it to open on both sides. And a lot of Americans, come over just to say sorry, basically.
That's Nicole Sekala, the owner of Rock Bottom Bar and Grill in Windsor, Ontario. Her business sits between 2 bridges connecting the Motor Cities, the nearly 100-year-old Ambassador Bridge and the brand new Gordie Howe Bridge, which is set to open as early as noon local time. But the opening of the bridge, conceived as a symbol of the partnership between the 2 nations, comes amid simmering tensions. On Friday, Canada hosted a ribbon-cutting event without the Americans, citing fresh U.S. tariff threats. On the other side of the bridge, Detroit resident Miranda King unfurled a Canada We're Sorry banner.
The trade wars
the insults over the wildfires, the disrespect, the lack of acknowledgement for all the help that they've given us over the years. We are not being good neighbors.
For Detroit Regional Chamber CEO Sandy Barua, the photo op is less important.
The manufacturing companies that we represent are desperate for the bridge to open, to, have better and tighter supply chains.
Come August 5th, people will also be able to bike or walk across the bridge. Sekala says she knows a lot of Canadians are avoiding the U.S. right now, but that she's ready to hop on her bike and give it a try. Emma Loop, CBC News, Windsor.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence, in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And we are under a yellow level heat warning for Winnipeg and for Brandon. Currently 21 degrees here at the Forks, with the humidex already feels like 27. We'll get a full look at your forecast coming up in this hour, this half hour of the program. Also coming up, why one of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights' biggest backers, Gail Asper, says she's no longer comfortable letting her family's money go to the museum. Part 2 of our conversation with her coming up next here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. Stay tuned. First, though, let's head to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk, and Heather Wells joining us with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a testament to the resilience of Indigenous people. That is how an Indigenous dancer, Dakota Eishen, describes Treaty 1's powwow, still going ahead yesterday after an apparent case of vandalism. On Friday, poles of the powwow's teepee were found slashed in half, but people pulled in donations and managed to fix the structure in time for that event yesterday. We're going to take you to that powwow coming up in our next news at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Darren Morash is our streaming producer today, and Abby Adiemi is our technician and studio director, and joins us now with a look at a bunch of things.
We will surely notice the heat wave today, because that's going to be holding a firm grip on southern Manitoba because of this yellow heat warning we have in place, rather due to the heat wave coming. We're talking about the Winnipeg area, the Brandon area, the Steinbach area, spreading all the way towards Port La Prairie and surrounding southern communities. We will see the humidex in the values of 38 in some areas, and some might even get to 40 with very little overnight relief expected to really hold things down for all of this week. So we may just cool off a bit in the evening, and then it's going to pick up again by the time we get to the morning tomorrow. Across the Red River this time, we're looking at Winnipeg starting the day at 20 degrees. We've been there since 6 o'clock. We're still at 20 in the city with partly cloudy skies. The sun there, we will expect a windy mix of sun and clouds with hazy conditions. The humidity would be close to 37, but we will get to a high of 29, along with a chance of late afternoon showers and maybe some thunderstorms might roll in, and we'll see more partly cloudy conditions tonight before those clear skies overnight. Across other regions in the south, the Pembina, the west, the Parkland, the Interlake region, we're looking at morning temperatures hovering between 19 and 22 at this time. Sunny to cloudy skies with the yellow heat warnings present in a bunch of regions in the south. It will get hot, and we're going to see really humid afternoons with highs around 30 degrees in most of the regions in the south, and the humidex will be close to 40 as mentioned. Then if we look up north, we're seeing temperatures between 15 and 19 this morning. Partly cloudy skies, rain showers in some areas. Highs would be close to 27 for the northern regions with the humidity just a bit above 30. Overall, the southern region, we're looking at extreme heat today, while up north it's more about the localized smoke still present there. And for traffic, expect delays on major routes, especially during the rush hour, which is already now. Expect traffic alerts on the Kineston
axis, as I mentioned, where the northbound, middle, and left turn lanes are closed between Eskerfield and McGilvery this morning with a reduced speed of 60 kilometers. So you need to slow down in that part of the city. You see anything in traffic? Let us know. 788-3093. Current temperatures in Winnipeg, 20 degrees.
Coming up to 15 minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. And as you heard in our last half hour, the Asper Foundation says it's suspending new funding to the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. In part one of the interview, Foundation trustee Gail Asper said she has concerns about the recently opened Palestine Uprooted, Nakba Past and Present exhibit, which features stories of Palestinians' displacement from Israel. Asper says the interviews with Palestinians and the artifacts on display are good additions to the museum. However, she takes exception with the panels explaining the Nakba, checkpoints in Israel, and recent fighting in Gaza after the October 7th attack by Hamas. Asper says those panels lack critical context about what was happening in Israel and the broader Middle East at the time, and blames as well the curators for the omission. Here is Asper explaining why she's so concerned.
The curator's job is to instill trust, to have scholarly rigor. And my biggest concern is that all the work that we put into this is going to be for naught if people don't trust this museum anymore. Because my dad always said, your most important asset is your reputation. You have to guard your reputation with your life, because once you're known as being a liar or providing half-truths or any other character flaws, it's very hard to dial that back and regain the public trust. And so it's made me feel personally extremely disappointed. It makes me feel afraid, seriously, that people are going to get more anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, I think, ideological propaganda from this museum. And it makes me worried about, that all of our work and the money that we've spent could be at risk because of this exhibit.
Now, in our second part of our interview with Gail Asper, guest host Corey Funk asks what she thinks needs to happen, or what she thinks needs to happen. Here is that conversation now.
First of all, I do think we need to have a review immediately of the exhibit. I think Heritage, or whatever it's called, Culture and Identity, in partnership with the board, should get a team of museum experts and historians to look at the exhibit and see if it's intellectually honest and accurate. But the bigger question is, I think this museum does need a bigger review of their policies on how they come to these decisions on how they do their what exhibits they do and how they're done, and who's driving these exhibits and who's watching the curators and holding them to account. Because I think it's fair game to, no curator has the right to hijack a national federal institution and present their ideological positions at the expense of truth and accuracy, a lack of bias. You need to make sure that you don't have bias in an institution. And I think this is evidence of bias. So I think the next very serious assessment needs to be done. I don't know who does it, but I think it probably should come from the government who's responsible for this institution to assess if they really are fulfilling their mandate to provide accurate, thoughtful, materials and be challenging the curators on these exhibits, because who knows what else isn't accurate.
So you want to see a review? Is that all you want to see change at the museum at this point in the wake of this exhibit?
I would be happy if this exhibit was immediately looked at. You could argue that it should be taken down but I would like to see the exhibit looked at. I'd like to see the materials, the education materials looked at for bias, and make sure that the docents who are being, the guides of this exhibit are not providing a one-sided, biased, ideologically driven view of internal people at the museum. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, absolutely, they need a very serious and sooner rather than later review of how this could have even happened.
I also understand that the Asper Foundation has suspended new funding to the CMHR in the wake of this exhibit. What does the foundation's current financial support for the museum look like?
Well, we were the major funders, the largest private sector funder of the actual $350 million project with $25 million seed money. And I'm my own donor as well of about $1 million. I have been an annual donor to and the Asper Foundation. So there's two of us. I'm separate from I'm a trustee of the Asper Foundation, but my brothers and I are trustees of the foundation, and we've always, once we start something, we've always wanted to generously support it and make sure it's flourishing. So we've always supported the galas with, the lead sponsor, $50,000 sponsorships, and we've supported exhibits. The most recent one being their very good exhibit on the Holocaust with these 3D Holocaust interviews that they've done well. So we've had to pull that funding. I think there was a new request of something like $150,000 to augment that exhibit, which we were definitely very positively disposed to do. But now there's just no way we want to support. We can't. My father would be appalled if we were seen to be supporting something that was spreading this kind of incorrect and dangerous information. And just, when my dad was asked about this after announcing the museum, would there be a Palestinian exhibit? He said right off the bat, it wouldn't be his job to make those decisions. He wouldn't be running the museum. It's the job of the board and the curators. But if there were to be one, he would demand that there be context. So by that, I think he definitely meant the concept of the rejection of the state and the first and the launching of the war. The war is crucial. And he would have preferred that they also include the fact that at the same time as 750,000 Palestinians were displaced, 850,000 Jewish people were displaced from all the neighboring Arab lands, as is often the case in these wars. So, and in the meantime, in Israel, all the Arabs were not ethnically cleansed. They were urged to stay by Israeli leadership. That's not in the museum. And it's not in the museum that 2 million out of the 9 million residents of Israel are Arab Israelis who can wear their identities freely and in peace. There's mosques on every corner. They're in parliament, Supreme Court justices. And that's the proof that they weren't ethnically cleansed, and they were urged to stay, and they did stay, and they're there today, flourishing.
Do you worry that pulling support could make it harder for the museum to get things right in the future?
We paused support. I have every faith that institutions can go sideways through inexperienced, poor leadership. I think there is a dearth of good museum experts on staff, frankly. I think that's a big problem. They have political scientists, but they don't understand that museums are supposed to provide context and present all sides. We're not an NGO, group that's got one section. We have a big responsibility as an arm of the federal government to provide accurate information. So I don't think that this is, a forever thing. I think things can improve. I have every hope as an optimist, which is why we built the Tower of Hope at the museum, that there will be improvements to the curatorship, better exhibits that really give the public the information they deserve.
Does that mean people losing their jobs over this?
That is definitely for the minister to decide. The CEO reports to the minister. The board reports to the minister. So it's up to them to decide, how serious it is. And then the curators who built this exhibit report to the CEO. So I have no idea what will happen. I just know that this is a disappointment for an organization that's supposed to bring people together. It's pretty incredible to have alienated the founders so egregiously and alienated the Jewish community too, because the mainstream Jewish community were hugely supportive. They volunteered when this thing was announced. They've donated. They're feeling equally perplexed, dismayed, betrayed. So it takes a lot of lots of energy to achieve something that has not been achieved, and to alienate us so egregiously, and it really hurts. But I don't know where it's going to go with the staffing. I'm always hopeful that things can be remedied, and with dialogue and understanding, we can get back on track. And this thing was always built to have dialogue, bring people together, and it just is so disappointing that this exhibit was so off-putting and so clearly biased and one-sided that there's just no way that they were, I think, acting in good faith with a view to bringing in the Jewish community. I think they knew this could not help but alienate the Jewish community.
You mentioned how, dialogue was a big part of this. I think everyone agrees that this did spark a dialogue, to say the least. Do you think any good has come from the controversy and conversations that surrounding this exhibit?
For sure. Actually, I like the fact that I have an opportunity here to do something that the museum's never done, which is talk about the history of 1948 and remind people about the tragedy. I think the real catastrophe was that the missed opportunity of having a Palestinian state for the last 78 years. So it is an opportunity to talk about it. And it's an opportunity, if we do the next phase of study, to finally improve the museum's curatorial processes. I will say, when I was doing my presentation, there was a board member who did start to ask the question, like a new board member said, I actually have no idea how the museum lands on its exhibits. I would like to know more, because it's not really clear to me when we haven't done he didn't say this, but I know we haven't done a Me Too exhibit. There's no Black Lives Matter exhibit. The timeline of the museum ends in 2007, which is pretty embarrassing. So how does the museum, so I think, decide what it's going to do and try to dig in and know that process a little better. That will be good. And raising awareness about this. And if we do get to having the dialogue, that's what we were meant to do. So that will be a good outcome. So I think if this gets fixed or amended, and it's not a huge amendment. And if they had just done it right from the start, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I think it can be a fairly speedy fix. And we should hopefully, God willing, be back on track again.
What's your message to people who are watching the discussion about the Nakba exhibit and just aren't sure what to do?
I think people should see the exhibit. I think they should hopefully be, having listened to this, look at it with a much more critical eye, and knowing the things that have been omitted deliberately, which could have been easily included. Ask yourself, why did the museum omit this information? What was the aim of the curators to leave this information out? And maybe start doing a little bit more reading and information. But you shouldn't have to do that to correct the museum. The museum should spark some questions about, well, what's going on with the museum, and how can, and I do think if anybody knows some of the facts and they see that they're missing and recognize the bias, I think they should be writing to the Minister of Canadian Culture and Identity, Mark Miller. I think they should be, writing to Aisha Khan and the board and just expressing their disappointment. I mean, some people are writing and saying they love it, but I don't think I think if you presented them with these facts saying, would you have a problem? Would you have a problem if this was information was added just to show that the museum understands the context? I think they would have probably said, absolutely no problem. Why not? And then we'll get into hearing how displacement has impacted people, which is a fair, legitimate, good thing to be discussing.
Gail Asper is a trustee of the Asper Foundation. She is the daughter of Izzy Asper, whose work led to the creation of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Her family played a major role in its construction, and she was speaking to Information Radio guest host Corey Funk. Now, we did ask for an interview with the CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, Aisha Khan. The museum said she wasn't available. Instead, it sent a statement, and it reads in part, focusing on Palestinian-Canadian experiences of forced displacement in this one exhibit does not detract or minimize experiences of Jewish people who were displaced and who have also faced human rights violations, which our galleries also share stories about. Telling the stories of one community in no way negates the experiences of another. It goes on to say, we stand behind our curatorial process and our reputation as a trusted source of human rights information.
I'm Michelle McDougall, your local reporter for CBC Manitoba in Brandon. You're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Bit of time for some music now. Here's Tracy Chapman with Fast Car. She's going to be on cue later today.
get a fast car. I want a ticket to anywhere. Maybe we make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove. You got a fast car. I got a plan to get us out of here. Been working at the convenience store. Managed to save just a little bit of money. Won't have to drive too far. Just cross the border and into the city. You and I can both get jobs and finally see what it means to be living. See, my old man's got a problem.
That's Tracy Chapman with Fast Car. You can hear a full conversation with her on Q later this morning. The news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It is partly cloudy, 21 right now. We're into another day with a heat warning. We're going to see a high of 29. It'll be hazy with a chance of showers, maybe a thunderstorm, but it's that humidex that is going to feel steamy. It'll be feeling like 37 this afternoon. Apparent vandalism did not stop a powwow this weekend. Indigenous dancers at a Treaty 1 powwow in Winnipeg. On Friday, poles of the powwow's teepee were found slashed in half. But people pulled in donations to fix the structure. Dancer Dakota Aishan says it's a testament to the resilience of Indigenous peoples.
When our people get dragged down, like stuff like that happen, you know, we come together, we work together, and we rebuild. And so that's what we're kind of known for, is rebuilding from the ground up.
Organizers and people at the powwow managed to set up a teepee with an extra set of poles offered for the weekend. A philanthropist who helped bring the Canadian Museum for Human Rights to Winnipeg says her family is pausing financial support to the museum. Gail Asper says it follows concerns around the new exhibit, Palestine Uprooted, Nakba, Past and Present. The collection explores the Nakba, Arabic for catastrophe, the term Palestinians used to describe Israel's 1948 Declaration of Independence, which led to around 750,000 Palestinians being displaced. Asper says she feels the small exhibit is missing context.
If it's so small that you can't include the truth, then you need to either not do it or you need to expand it. That's a museum decision to make it so small. The museum's got lots of room. I think they have room for the truth.
Asper says she would like to see included is that the Jews were also displaced in the wake of Israel's creation and that Arab leaders rejected a 1947 resolution to divide Palestine into Arab and Jewish states. A museum spokesperson says it stands behind its curatorial process. You can read more on this story on our website this morning. People in Rossburn have rallied to help a retired couple whose historic farmhouse was destroyed by a tornado. The bricks of Brian and Bernadine Brown's century home were ripped from the walls. The historic barn's upper half was ruined. Now the Browns are picking up the pieces with help from the community. Karen Burgesson volunteered at two fundraisers for the families who were affected by that storm.
Just to see how many people come together to help out in something like that. You know, when it's a disaster, people do pitch in and help.
The Browns are living in a small suite now in Rossburn. They plan to move to Oak Bank next summer. A new study from the Canadian Medical Association Journal warns of doctor burnout. Some 10% of physicians surveyed have left the profession. The study surveyed more than 400 ER doctors across Canada. Dr. Kristen DeWitt is an emergency physician and professor. She co-authored this paper.
Everybody commented on the increased workload and the deteriorating clinical care, and most physicians felt powerless to change that.
Advocates say the Canadian government needs to invest more in healthcare. Canada's newest border crossing opens to traffic today. The Gordie Howe International Bridge connects Windsor to Detroit. The bridge is meant to be a symbol of partnership between the two countries, but it opens in the middle of tense trade discussions and new tariff threats. Nicole Sakella is the owner of Rock Bottom Bar and Grill in Windsor.
Everybody's been anxiously waiting for it to open on both sides. And a lot of Americans, come over just to say sorry, basically.
Well, the bridge opening was delayed by U.S. President Donald Trump over toll revenue. On Friday, Canada hosted an official ribbon cutting but did not invite any U.S. representatives. And Canadians have until August 27th to file a claim in a class action lawsuit over the drug Rexulti, used to treat schizophrenia and depression. The multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit covers Canadians who were prescribed the drug since February 2017 and later developed compulsive behaviors or impulse control disorders. That includes gambling, shopping, or binge eating. Applicants could receive anywhere from roughly $6,500 for mild cases to more than $100,000 in more severe cases. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks very much, and nice working with you.
Nice working with you, too. Thank you.
That's Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk, along with Joni Nicolou and Darren Bernhardt. Abby Adiemi back for a last look at the weather/commute.
Yes, that heat is going to be the big topic for today, with the humidex in the south getting to 38, close to 40 in some areas, while the northern regions, stable conditions. We might still notice some smoke in the air, but no alert for that. The south, current temperatures near 22 now. Most of the regions will warm up close to 30 degrees later, with the heat warming up close to 40, while up north we're seeing temperatures near 19 degrees at this time, and we are noticing just local smoke with highs, let's just say between 21 and 27. Winnipeg sits at 21 at this time, and we will see a high of Winnipeg sits at 21, a high of 29 later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adiemi, our studio director and our technician on the program. Thanks to Darren Morash, who is our YouTube streaming producer as well. And thanks to our associate producers for contributing to the show this for today, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, and Sophia Peralta Barone. Nelly Gonzalez is our show producer of the Current Affairs Unit, and Leif Larson is our senior producer of audio. Join me on Radio Noon today at 12 o'clock for a conversation about a pipeline being built in your backyard. How would you feel about that? We'll explore that coming up on the call-in portion of the program. Mag-ingat po kayo and take good care. I'm Faith Wendell in for Marcy Marcusa. Stay tuned. The Current is standing by.